Hello everybody. Okay, so I got really worried for a second because it didn't start. Hang on. Okay, so hi everybody. I haven't been around for so long, like an entire year, more than a year, and I feel terrible. It actually makes me feel really guilty because I feel like I'm neglecting everybody, and plus I'm not, like supporting the community, etc. But it's been a hectic year, let me just tell you. Anyway, well, I guess for everybody, right, because of COVID. Anyhow, like the good news is I don't have to have Botox because no one can see my face because of a face mask all the time. Anyway, I'm really glad that you joined, and for those of you that have been friends of mine for years and years that are in here, re-upping your teacher certification hours, I really appreciate it. I'm going to try and be better about being online, but the Airbnbs, other people are like, we don't care about your Airbnbs, but no, it's been really hectic. I worked for the USDA, and then I hurt my back, and now I'm back in Temecula, and then we have a coyote problem, and we lose something every day. I'm not kidding you. It's been like a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. But I'm going to try and be better and try and social network. But when life happens, that's the first thing I drop because I like interpersonal relationships. It's very hard for me to have relationships that are on the internet. And some people prefer relationships on the internet, but I want to see you and hug you and have you be part of my life. I don't want to just do this thing where it's just so vacant. Like for me, the internet is really a difficult thing because you have people that really love you, that really do, and you feel connected with. And then you have people that no matter what you post, I don't care what you post, they have to say something negative, and it just really irritates me. It gets on my nerves, and I have like real life problems. I don't have pretend problems on the internet where I have to like, be a dick sort of thing. Anyway, moving on. So obviously, clearly, I'm Natalie Redding. You're in Dice Secrets, the intensive, and it does bum me out that I haven't done much this last year because for those of you that don't know my methodologies, like it will literally open your eyes. If you're new, it's going to save you a ton of money because you're going to have this massive understanding of what's going on with fleeces and why your dye pots end up the way they do. And if you're super experienced, the thing that's great is you will have seen all of the things that I'm talking about. You maybe just couldn't explain them. And so Redding Method, first of all, I didn't come up with the name. People, I'm sure, they used to like give me sort of a hard time. Like somehow I think I'm an amazing person, which, that we can argue that maybe I am. I possibly think I'm amazing, but it's not. I didn't even name it. So, it was Arlene Thayer that wanted to name it this. And I ended up coming up with this methodology by reading a ton of scientific peer-reviewed papers on dyeing because actually I'm a scientist. So my master's degree was in agriculture, but it was in animal biotechnology, and I had to read a ton of peer-reviewed papers, scholarly articles, because I was investigating whole genome amplification systems. So essentially, I was looking to amplify DNA with very, very low cell numbers. And so what it did, though, is it made me able to research, and it also made me see how much we know about everything, but most people don't know that we know this. So for example, amplifying DNA at the time, everybody used PCR, but PCR does really poorly with like 4 cells, right? 4 copies of the genome. So I needed to find something that was new, and everybody thought there wasn't anything new. But if you do a lot of research, it's amazing. So there was a new paper out. And it's the same thing with dyeing. There's so much information, but not for people that are trying to do it at home. Really everything, even the dyes that we have, those were made for machinery, right? So there was the reason why people had difficulty was because we're kind of bastardizing these dyes. Yes, they sell them in small batches, but these dyes are professional dyes that are used like for silks in India, for protein fibers in China. They just have this equipment that makes it really easy for them to have consistent results because it's basically laboratory equipment essentially, but it's not. I mean, it's in India, arguably it's all sort of these, small craft type of, it's like in people's garages. But in China, they have like steam heat, they have, pressure, they have things that we don't have. So people for years and years and years, of course, were way before me, were, using these dyes, but having all of these varied results and not really understanding why. And what I did is I just started reading all these peer-reviewed papers about the chemistry of the dyes and then the fibers themselves. And since I'm a shepherd, first and foremost, I'm a shepherd. And I had, brokered tens of thousands of pounds of wool from the UK and really all over the world. And so I've put my hands in so much raw wool and seen how different all the wools are. And then because I have so many different wools, like most people don't, I'm dyeing them and seeing all these different results. And so that's sort of how this whole thing happened. And it really taught me why people can't have consistency. And then I put it all together and tried to make it into something that was palatable, that you could listen to without having your mind explode and be completely bored, and be able to use a lot of anecdotal things and stories, etc., to try to make it interesting so that you could learn. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to start with the beginning. Essentially, we're going to start with the beginning, and I'm going to put my husband's number up here because what happens sometimes is it is the internet. We have a very fast internet, but shit happens. So I'm gonna put his number up here, and if anything happens, like you can't hear, because like sometimes it's you, like you actually turned off something. This happens all the time. But sometimes our internet dropped us because the internet's a sketchy place, right? Things happen. So my husband's name's Sean, but it's best to text him because obviously he's on the camera, and it's 951-303-5031. His name is Sean, and you text him. I'm going to try and check chat. I kind of get going on a roll, but I try and check chat to see questions, and this is what you have to do. If you have a question, you have to put a Q in front of it, because you guys will start maybe visiting or something, and then I can't read through all your visiting. I just have to look for a capital Q. And sometimes it'll, write your questions down on a piece of paper too, because I'm not going to keep checking back and forth because I have to go around. So, but I do try to take a moment to see, especially if it's a concept that is difficult. Okay, today we shouldn't have too many problems because this shouldn't be difficult concepts. So, writing method, we already went through that. Writing method, and this is class 1. Okay, the first thing that I want you to know, and I'm going to drill this. It's hard to drill it into your head since we only have essentially 3 classes. Typically it's 7, right? But we've put all the classes, we've doubled them up. And one day we tripled them. So the first thing I want you to know is that what we're always looking for in Ready Method is consistency. And consistency, right now we're building like a palace outside for my chickens with all reclaimed lumber and just, pallet boards and all kinds of stuff. And so what is consistency in that? I see, we have to, because these boards aren't perfect, we have to allow variation. Well, that's the same thing if you have Navajo churro, right? If you have a Navajo churro fleece and not a super amazing merino fleece, you're gonna have way more variation because you're gonna have hair. I mean, the Navajo churro would be more like working with pallet boards, right? You're gonna have to understand that consistency is relative, right? So we're looking for consistency, and we're looking really to have not with just consistency, because we don't care if it's consistent if it sucks. So we also want depth and dimension. Depth and dimension. And if you're a painter, you understand what I'm saying. And I always talk about that if I was painting grass, there's actually white in there and yellow in there, and because we want it to we want it to move, we want it to speak, we want to have layers, and we want it to have a lot of this this depth and dimension is the best way to explain it. We don't just want to have a flat. So I don't use, if I'm going to make, in my dyeing, I'm going to create a green, I don't use one dye of green. That's absurd. I don't just go and get forest green and decide I'm going to make forest green. If I'm going to make forest green, to be honest with you, I'm probably going to use national blue, forest green, a lime green, maybe a grasshopper. I use so many dyes to make forest green, even though there's a dye called forest green. So it's all about being able to create something that's alive. And one of the reasons that people loved my dyeing was because it looks like it's kind of alive. I mean, it's really deep. Okay? So I just wanted to give you this is what I want you to take away. This is the takeaway of all these hours that you're going to spend with me here, is that I'm trying to give you consistency, which is going to save you money. Right? Because if you make a dye pot and you love it and you go to make it again, there's a giant chance that has not happened. And if you're really experienced, you can do it. Because obviously people don't have to take my class to be able to do these things, but what ends up happening is the second you change fleeces, or you should make some variable, everything changes. And I've learned that the hard way. And it's a perfect example is I used to make, Yarn Market used to be the biggest online retailer. It was massive. And they hired me just to make hand spun yarns for them. And I ran, Romney is a long wool, and I raise long wools, but I don't raise Romneys. I raise Teeswaters, but I would sell my super nice fleeces, and then the other ones I'd use to make the yarns. And I ran out of Teeswater, and so I just had some Romney on hand, and I needed to dye it that color, and it could not dye the colors that I needed, because Romney, even though it's a long wool, it's not Teeswater. So, you know, I could have made it look this similar, but I couldn't because I changed fleece. You just can't do that. You know, I would have had to go and get a similar type of, if it was a lamb fleece, I would have had to get a similar lamb fleece. I couldn't have even gotten an adult fleece. And I would have been able to do it, but it was like the first time that I started waking up to like the reality of the dyeing, is little by little by little by little by little, and just seeing how much when little things changed, my results changed, right? It's and consistency is elusive. And then once again, I go back to, we're always trying to make it look good because we just don't care if it doesn't look good. Who cares, right? So this is what we're going for. Okay, and now I'm going to move on to Roman numeral 1. And since this is the beginning, and I'm going to spell things wrong because I'm used to spell check. Begin to ing. I can't remember it. Even though I'm educated, I need spell check now. Okay, how safe are these dyes? Let's just start with like what you have to worry about. Okay. I know a guy who was a chicken breeder, showed chickens for like 40 years, and he got avian tuberculosis, essentially. And he like literally was a lunger. Like he, from breathing all of the dust from birds. And you know, there's a lot in chicken coops. If you own chickens, you know that, right? So I just try not to breathe bad stuff. I'm out there pouring cement yesterday, and the cement, you know, dry cement's coming up in my face. And I'm like not super worried because I smoked Marlboro Reds for like 18 years or something like that. But on the other hand, you just don't want to breathe cement. You don't want to breathe anything that's small particles. Your dyes are included in that. So do I wear a face mask? Okay, you guys, if you're wearing a giant face mask, that's absurd. Like one of those ones that's like for toxic paint, because these dyes, actually, most of them are in our foods. Not counting ones with metals in them, like chromium. Chromium typically is black, has chromium in it, and usually it's going to tell you whether or not, if we're just using wash fast dyes, so this is the name of these dyes, wash fast. Sometimes you'll see them AKA acid fast, AKA nylomine, which is an old trade name. These dyes typically don't have any metals in them. Like, and once again, chromium, black, there's some that do. If you buy on, I typically buy from both Dharma and Prochem. Prochem is kind of my go-to because I started with them, but then what happens is I used to only have, you know, I don't believe in having every dye on the face of the planet, but your environment, some dyes will work better because they're all different molecular weight. And see, here's where the variation comes in. And this is not a concept I'm not going to talk about more. I'm going to be really expanding on what I just said. But so in your environment and your water, there may be certain dyes that are similar, but for some reason Prochem is problematic for you, and then you find one that's similar from Dharma, and it ends up, you know, being a lot better for you. I think I have more dyes from Prochem than anyone, but once again, that's for no other reason than, you know, and I like to experiment. I like to, you know, see if this, you know, just because if a lot of people say red isn't color fast, well, that's not true. Some reds aren't color fast, but these dyes in themselves are not color fast. So that's the thing about this color fastness. I don't know where we're at anymore because I don't spend a lot of time online, and I can't go in these beginner groups because my head explodes. Like, I won't go into a beginner group and say anything because some idiot's going to try and challenge me, and I actually know. So I don't want to hear and argue with some idiot when I've got my husband waiting for me, my kids waiting for me, animals dying. I don't care, right? And if they want my information, they can come to me. But I'm just letting you know that the information out there is really bad. There are some dyes, and I'll give you one that's really not color fast. It's very difficult. Rhodamine red, if that's the only red you ever used, Rhodamine red from ProChem, and you don't use it exactly right, you are going to be bleeding dye until the cows come. It's never going to end. But once again, these dyes are not known for their color fastness. They have moderate color fastness, some of them have very poor color fastness. So for someone to, it would be like expecting me to speak slowly. I don't speak slowly. I never speak slowly. It's an idiosyncrasy. I'm not nervous. This is just who I am. And so if someone's going to expect me to speak slowly, then they're going to be very disappointed. So we can't expect these dyes to be color fast. That said, once you learn each dye that you find that you love, you will learn its personal idiosyncrasies and how far you can push it for it to stay within a range of acceptable color fastness. Well, why will we use them if they're not they're the best? If we want to add metals and make them more toxic and dangerous and not as bright, by the way, we can get great color fastness. So Sabricet, Lanacet, those dyes, if they end up having, when you buy those, they are going to have excellent color fastness. But the problem is that they all, they're limited colors and they're just not as bright. So these are the ones that we use. This is the gold standard for protein fibers. Wash fast, acid fast. And once again, I'm going to say Dharma. I use Dharma. And I use ProChem. ProChem has a little kit that they put together for Dye Secrets class. It's got little dyes in it, and it's actually, I think, a discount of 5. I don't get any of it, but they just did it to be nice. I don't know if they still have it because I haven't taught in a year, but a little bit more than a year. And but it has, like, I'm just going to give you a few of my favorite colors. But I want you to know these little tiny ones, which in a dye pot, I will use an entire one of those, essentially. If you see the amount of dye that I use in things, people that have been dyeing for a long time, and you're going to absolutely go, oh my God, I can't believe she's doing that, because I use so much dye. But I also know how to make things. I also understand the way they work, so it's like you can push the envelope. It's like when you're a cook, like you don't follow the recipe, you just know. I just know. And here's some colors that I think everybody should have. You always, obviously, clearly, let's be honest, we're going to have a green. And I used to use key lime from ProChem, but I kind of, it gets on my nerves a little bit. It can be problematic, but I use it, but some people have a lot of problems with it. It can take over your pot if you're not careful. Key lime, ProChem. But then there's a wonderful chartreuse from Dharma. And then I really love Sea Breeze for my blue. And I'm pretty sure Sea Breeze is ProChem. I use this as a blue. And then for red, I don't know what the red that I use always, to be honest with you, and this is such a great red, is Fuchsia from ProChem, but I like to help it. So I'll usually put another red with it to make it deeper. And actually here, okay, so bright orange used to be the orange that I would use all the time. And because I'm telling you that these colors too, because the best teaching tool that we have is going to be the next section of today's class, which is the mother of all. And so having a red, a yellow, a green, a blue is really crucial to being able to make this pot. And so these are like your foundational colors, and then you branch out from there. And your yellows, all of these colors really are important, because as a teaching tool, the next section of this class, the dyes, you can't have a lot of residual dye, which means dye remaining in the pot that's going to travel over into something else, and because then it just makes mud. So that's why these colors are so crucial, to get ones that you can work with that you like. And then as a yellow, I really like Brilliant Yellow, and I'm pretty sure this is Dharma. You have to use a lot of it, but it's a really great yellow. So key lime, one of this chartreuse, sea breeze, fuchsia, brilliant yellow, and then the orange is, I used to use, said bright orange, but I don't anymore because it's a little bit burnished, but I really do love cantaloupe. Is it cantaloupe? I don't know, canta. I don't know what's going on. Cantaloupe, and this is broken. So here, the key to these, if you have dyes already, the problem is if you use like a burnt orange, like a pumpkin instead of orange, this bright orange, this cantaloupe, it's already muddy. So you can't tell if you did something wrong. You have to have really crisp, super crisp colors. So that you can see if you made a mistake, put too much dye, and then you can see your crossover and you can evaluate your own pot, and then like you're sort of like doing a forensic on your pot and reconstructing the scene of the crime to see where it is that you went awry. So of these safe dyes, none of these that I've talked about right here, none of these have a chromium, and as I said, typically this is what the metal is going to be, and so they're fairly safe. And as a matter of fact, there's ones like turquoise from Procan, which is another amazing one, by the way. But it's a heavy hitter. It smells like blueberries. You almost can, you're all like, is this not in my Pop-Tarts? Anyway, let me check really quick and see if I've left you guys. I just want to, you look at that. Let me see if there's any questions. So questions? I'm just writing real quick, sorry. Okay, so nobody has any questions yet. Okay, I didn't give you very long, but let's see. Okay, moving on. I'm so happy you guys are here, and for those of you, I see a lot of names I know, so a lot of you already know this stuff. So the safety of the dyes, we've done that. We've done the dyes, why I like certain dyes over other dyes, etc. I'm just going to, while this dries, I'm just going to go see if there's a question. I don't think there's a question, because this is pretty easy stuff. Right here. Okay. So, okay, and then, of course, there's, equipment. Let me just say right now, I use the crappy brewing pots, and I think they're like between 18 and 22 quart. I mean, I have one that's like a cauldron. It's like, I think it's 44 quart. I love it. But they're really thin on the bottom. They're really thin, and just like cooking, those suck. They, because what happens is you burn your fiber, especially if you have something this deep and this heat's just pummeling, right? It's pummeling this bottom part, right? So we have our pot, and when it's big like that, my art is amazing. You guys, my drawing, I should have been an artist, really, like a sketch artist. So, the flames here, and then this part's just getting pummeled. And then as we go up, obviously, this air is coming down, and it's cooling this part. And this just keeps getting pummeled and pummeled and pummeled and pummeled and pummeled. And if we have long wools, okay, no big deal, because it's probably not going to felt. But if we have a double-coated animal, like a, Navajo churro, like I said, or like something, anything like that, caracal, an adult caracal, the chances are we're going to get a felted mess in here. Or if we have a fine wool, something that wants to felt, it's probably, we have to be really careful. So, if you can afford them, you want, and you can go to Goodwill or like Habitat for Humanity or something, and they have like those enamel pots. Enamel pots are bad in one way, because not the enamel canning ones. I'm talking about those cast iron ones that have enamel on them. But then I've never seen them really super big unless they're super expensive. But sometimes you can find them. The enamel canning pots I really hate, because that coating comes off because we're putting vinegar. We're using vinegar. That's essentially what's activating our dyes, right? And so that vinegar chips away at it, and pretty soon you just have rust. And a lot of people have comment about whether or not, you just hear so many fallacies, you guys. It's so ridiculous, like that you can't use aluminum because it's going to interfere with the dyes. Well, that's just absurd. These dyes, we're not dealing with really any metals except for the chromium. And I can honestly say, having other metals leach into there doesn't make a difference because we're not dealing with metals. Okay, if you were, I don't know anything about natural dyeing. I just know that now we're introducing other things where metals could interfere, right? Then it matters, but people like to conflate things. So somebody, somewhere there was a natural dyer told someone you can't use aluminum because aluminum's really tin, and when it degrades, it leaches, and I'm sure that this is where this came from. And then it became where everybody was saying you can't use aluminum. You guys, the pots I use, you would just laugh at. Like I have ones that rust is coming off of, and you know, I mean, I use, it's ridiculous. It's actually absurd. But I still get consistent results because it obviously clearly doesn't matter. And people dye all the time in those turkey roaster pans in the oven. They'll be telling you can't use anything like aluminum foil or anything, but then they're oven dyeing with an aluminum pan. And you're just like, wait a second. So you have to be careful about listening to people. I hate to say it. Hopefully after this class though, you'll have enough information where you can just like take the white noise and just get rid of it and listen to yourself and check in with other people that have been in Reading Method and talk back and forth and be able to, you know, ferret things out rather than listen to people that are idiots. Because even when I started, here's a perfect example. And also remember, fear, we've had a year of fear, right? Fear is very powerful. It makes people listen. So these people that don't get anyone listening to them, the first thing they need to do, they start doing is saying things that make people fearful. When I started hand spinning, somebody decided they were going to tell people that you could get anthrax, which technically anthrax is in fleece. You could. But come on, and rabies, that was another one, and that you absolutely should have a tetanus shot before you ever hand spin. People, this was on Ravelry where people were going like ape shit over this. They actually believed it. Don't ever spin until you've had a tetanus shot. And be careful about, I mean, I was just like, oh my God, these people are insane. My hands, if you saw them right now, how many times do I hit myself with rusty nails and the inside of sheep feet when I'm, trimming them? I stab myself with and inject myself with a filthy needle with 12 cc's of a tetanus shot for sheep, and the needle had been used like on 25 sheep in the dirt, and I'm still here. So it's just, don't get hysterical. That's one of my big things. Don't get hysterical. Okay, so equipment, you want this at 16 ounce to 22 ounce, and it's way better. Some people will, when I teach in person, they'll get this, it'll hit like 18 quarts or whatever, or 16 quarts, but it'll be way wide. And your burner's only like this, right? Instead of tall. You actually want it tall. You don't want it too narrow because you want to be able to, especially if you like to use a lot of colors, because if it's too narrow and too tall, think about that. The heat still has to get up to the top, and then you can't put very many colors because we're going to be putting colors in and we're going to be separating them, We're going to be separating the colors like this. So imagine if I have a little tiny top and I want to put like 6 colors in it, how am I going to do that without them all crossing over? So, the brewer's kind of pots are amazing, and you want them to be thick if you can afford them. Bottom line, that's it. Okay. I've already said that thick bottom's best. Don't freak out about aluminum. On Amazon, you can buy those, whatever they are, brewing pots. But I would just go and try Goodwill. They have the same one. I see them there all the time. Okay. And then I like to have tongs. And I love to have, you can buy these things. Here's a really good one. These are really long. They're these stainless steel skewers. And actually, Jennifer Nightingale bought these for me. I love her so much. Anyway, she's a longtime friend. And whenever she finds something cool, she buys them for me. But these are amazing. I like them because I put dye on them, and I'm like shoveling dye in with these, or with this end, shoveling it in, right? And then there's these Weber ones. There's some Weber ones that are wood, and they look like this. They're wood skewers, like this. So this is a wood. This whole thing's wood, but I love this flat part. It's a flat part, and I can just scoop dye, crazy scoop dye. So these are the Weber ones. You can go online, Weber, and look for these skewers, or these ones, and I don't know where she got these, but I would put stainless steel, what would these be called, chopsticks? Stainless steel chopsticks, giant chopsticks, I don't know. They have like a regular size one. Of course I like this one since I'm shoveling dye. And sometimes I just grab like plastic spoons and just shovel dye in, right? I really do. But, and you know what? I'm not afraid to just use I'll use my utensils. I don't care, because I have iron utensils and stainless steel utensils. Last time I checked, something that doesn't have there's no way, how's it going to leach into that? That's what we autoclave, is like stainless steel, right? We autoclave that. So obviously, clearly, it's not like wood. Like I wouldn't use a wood spoon in my dye and then use a wood spoon for my kids' soup, but I would use a stainless steel one. I just don't worry about that stuff. Okay, tongs. And, I'm sorry, this should be two. Tongs. And stainless steel chopsticks are really important, because you like it because you want to be able to reach, you want to be able to reach the bottom of your pot, right? Chopsticks, I think they are. And I also like, like I said, I like these little skewers that are, what did I say they were? What was the brand name again? Whatever. You guys are like, wow, you're real good tonight, Natalie. We were busy so bad. We were trying to get this Airbnb. We were up and we've been working till all hours of the night. So stainless steel chopsticks, okay. And I am not a person who likes to like push a product. So we have a shampoo company, a wool shampoo company, and you never hear about it because I never post about it, because thankfully it's good enough that people just buy it anyway. Because it's that good. But I'm telling you, you're dying if you don't have wash and dye. People that use wash and dye, if you run out of it, you're sick, because it makes the dye strike so much faster. So wash and dye, you really need wash and dye. And the thing is that I don't wash my fleece beforehand unless it's a disgusting buck fleece or a ram fleece. And typically, quite frankly, if I have a disgusting ram fleece or a buck fleece, I won't use it, because it's sort of like the wet dog theory. I might be able to get that smell out, but when it gets wet, it sort of resurrects itself. I don't want to make anything that I'm going to smell like a buck or a ram. Some people like it, like the smell. It makes me want to vomit. So wash and dye, you can buy this, and you use, you don't have to use, when I first got it, Laura Spinner is a really good friend of mine. I love her so much. I've really neglected our friendship, but she's a great friend. I mean, really amazing. And anyway, when I first had this developed, I only had a 16-ounce bottle, and I shared it with her. And before we could get the product, it made our dyeing so much better. And before we could get more of it, it was like months, right? Because they heat it, like they don't give us our batch for like 3 months. So they make a batch, they keep it for 3 months and like heat a section of it to make sure it's gonna not spoil. So we have to wait for it. So we're waiting, and we only had this, each of us 8 ounces. She started using like teardrops of it, and it still was helping. Really, but she dyes not like I dye huge, gigantic amounts. I'll dye like 10 pounds at once. And she doesn't. She does a lot of the, more fine stuff, but it doesn't matter. So you don't have to use a lot of it. I use a lot of it. And you can get this at www.woolshampoo.com. There's another one of there's another product that is called Dirty Rotten Bastard, DRB. Sean and I just call it DRB. And this is a scouring shampoo. So this is like not just for dyeing, but it's also for low oil fibers. So like, even if I'm not dyeing and I just want to wash mohair, unless it's gunky mohair. If it's gunky mohair, I go straight to Dirty Rotten Bastard. Dirty Rotten Bastard is like this little secret of people that are show dogs. Somehow somebody that was a show dog or show dogs ended up like getting some and sharing with it. And so a lot of people that show dogs buy this product for the dog. But it's, to be honest with you, it's human grade. It's cosmetic grade. It's not, nothing, against like Unicorn or anything like that. But theirs is like industrial chemicals. It's actually cosmetic grade. It comes from a cosmetics factory in Riverside, California. And this is amazing. It doesn't have sulfites, etc., etc., etc. So good stuff. Won't hurt your hands. Good for low oil fibers, and then great for dyeing. And this is for scouring crappy, like horrible, gunky mohair or like or merino, anything with a lot of oil in it. You want to hit it with Dirty Rotten Bastard first. And because I only have like a couple merinos, and I do have Corriedales, I use Dirty Rotten Bastard, and I'll rinse it before I dye it. When I dye with low oil fibers, I never wash it beforehand. I put the dye in I put the shampoo in the dye bath, and you'll see that. And what a great way to cut out steps, right? Okay, so let me just really quick look if anybody has any questions. I'm kind of belaboring that point, sorry. Okay. Okay, so I just talked about washing. I'm going to talk a little bit about after I do this. Let me just finish this part up. You want a colander, obviously a colander, because I mean I like having one. I have a few of them. I buy them at like the discount stores, like I don't know. So TJ Maxx, they have the ones. I like they have these stainless steel long ones that like expand so they can go over different size pots. But I do such a large volume that I just dump it out onto my racks, my dry racks that have like hardwood cloth on them. But you want a colander. And you do want multiple pots, because I like to save the residual. Like if I have a lot of residual, so residual dye. So like, because I do use so much dye, what happens is the idea that your water is going to be clear, get that out of your head. That's a fallacy. The water's going to be clear if you don't use enough dye. What happens is as I'm dyeing, because I'm adding so much dye, the stuff that it's going through, and not all of it, as it's migrating down, because I use dry dye, everybody. I use dry dye. I do not constitute my dye in water and use it, typically. That's not true for everything, but for purposes of this class, I typically do not. Unless I have leftover dye from something else and it's wet, it's already constituted, I use just dry dye. So what's going to happen is this bottom part, let's say, is going to be, I don't know, 100 and let's say 80 degrees or something like that. 180 to 200 and something, 200 plus degrees. And it's going to be cooler as it gets up here. It's getting cooler, it's getting cooler. Well, these dyes need heat to strike. And the heat they need to strike is around here. 212, somewhere about 212. It's where almost all dyes are going to strike. So it's not 212 here. And these dyes are coming down. It can't strike, it can't strike, it can't strike. It's some of it's striking, it's getting warmer, some of it's striking, more striking, more striking, more striking. A little bit more, a little bit more. But now, because it's just like if I use, think about this. These dyes aren't one single color. They're a bunch of colors. I'm going to go over this again and again. They're a bunch of colors. If it's a bunch of colors, it's a bunch of different sizes. Each of these sizes is going to strike at a different temperature. But if I start pulling out different sizes at different temperature, the color, if these dye colors don't represent the color that I put in, because some of the molecules have already struck. So if I have Sea Breeze and I dump it in here and it needs 212 exactly to strike, and we're not 212 here, some of the particles of Sea Breeze, the yellow in Sea Breeze, the purple in Sea Breeze, or whatever it is in all the different colors, some of those are going to strike up here where it's lower. But I would say most of them are going to start striking here. So we're losing these ones up here. We're losing these ones. So this is not going to be the color of Sea Breeze. And this is not going to be the color of Sea Breeze. What we have to do, it's almost like we're stacking. Even though we start here, we get our color here first, because as more and more we put more and more drop to the bottom, and pretty soon we'll get these little ones that strike up here. They can't find anywhere else to strike. So they dump to the bottom, and now we're making Sea Breeze. Because the ones, remember, if I only used a little bit of dye, part of my dye is striking up here in the range that is for ones with a lower molecular or a higher molecular size. The other ones are down here striking, but they actually, for it to be the color of Sea Breeze, we need these little ones. Eventually, when we're saturated in this fiber, those little ones will finally, they have nowhere to go. Since they have nowhere to go, they're going to be down here. Now we're here. Now we have Sea Breeze here, and it just starts stacking. The way I think of it is our dyes are going to, even though we dump them in here, we start getting color here, 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 here. And the way we do that is by basically saturating, so we can get Sea Breeze to be the entire section. not this to be some super light blue, this to be some blue that's not sea breeze, and this to be some variation in between. And so what happens is, obviously, since I'm saturating like crazy, I'm going to have too many dye particles. There's going to be a ton of dye in this thing. A ton. But I'm not adding dye without paying attention. There's a difference between dumping your dye at once. Like some people just take a whole bunch of dye and shove it. Think about that. If I took a giant, 3 tablespoons of dye and shoved it on this side of my pot at once, nothing has a chance to strike. It's just going to go thump right here. It's going to sit on the bottom of this pot. The heat's going to hit it. Heat energy pushes things up. And when it pushes up, it disperses. My dye on the bottom goes like this and F's my entire pot up. So if I had yellow over here and I had blue over here, now I'm going to have the entire pot as green. So adding like this idea, I'm telling you this because this idea of understanding that what we're doing, and understanding that I do things profoundly different. I do things profoundly different. And that there's fallacies, such as you can't, you have to wash your fleece first, and, you always want your water clear. People that have their water clear all the time have shitty dye jobs, sorry. They don't have the level of color that you get with saturating. Let me just make sure there's no question. I'm sorry to keep walking away. I just want to make sure I'm not losing anybody, because I get like excited. Okay. So, hi Lois, it's so good to see you. Lois is an amazing artist, you guys. She does jewelry too, and I know her. Okay. So I think, let's just move on from that. I already said we don't have to do, those respirators. It's when I see people with that, it just makes me, I don't think anything less of anybody. I just think, okay, like you are really overthinking this. These dyes, we're not dealing with toxic paint here, and we're not dealing with, what is that thing that you use with oil paints? What is that? Whatever it is that makes them, cleans your brushes and stuff. Turpentine. We're not dealing with turpentine here. We're not dealing with like anything like that. So let me just check real quick. Just don't inhale dry dyes. Okay. So when we wash, there's washing and problems. Here, you guys, I told you I don't even want to deal with buck fleeces or anything but buck fleece. In chemistry, it's fight fire with fire. Essentially, it's like dissolves like. Always think of that. So if I have something oily that I want to get rid of, I don't use alcohol typically. I'll use an oil to get rid of it first, and then alcohol, right? Sort of thing. That's the way I think of things. Or or even like, so because I have Airbnbs and my linens are very expensive. I have Ralph Lauren linens, and I iron them. And if somebody gets like a cut or something, and there's a piece of speck of blood on the sheet or something, if I put bleach on that, that does nothing, right? Because bleach is alkaline. Plant matter likes bleach, such as cotton. Okay, so if I had, I don't know, say tomato thing, I might use bleach. But if I have, let's say a protein substance, which blood is, blood equals protein, I'm going to go to hydrogen peroxide. Why is that? Hydrogen peroxide is what we use to whiten protein fibers. So if you want to bleach, you've got yellow fiber, yellow fiber. There's a couple of things that I do for yellow fibers, but or anything that has to do with wool, any silk, any of the protein fibers that you want it to get white, I start with hydrogen peroxide and I branch out from there. It doesn't mean that there are some other things that I use to get it out that can be basic. This is basic. Basic. Alkaline is basic. And then protein fibers like acid. It's essentially what it is. Okay? So washing problems. Okay, let's start with yellow fleece. Well, there's a multitude of reasons why fleece can be yellow. It could be the yolk, the suet, like we know when you like leave. There's sometimes that ecru fleeces are the typical, right? So, but if it's yellow from staining, you want to try hydrogen peroxide. And hydrogen peroxide reacts with water, and it's not very stable. And so you can put water, because it's expensive, so you can put water in it. But typically you want to, and then I put it in the sun. So I'll put it in the sun. Hydrogen peroxide on yellow fleece, and I'll have the yellow fleece can be in a little bit of water, dump a bunch of hydrogen peroxide in it, put it in the sun, and if it's not lifting enough, then what I will do is I will hit it with, I will take it out and I will make a paste of lemon, and now I'm going to go basic, which typically I wouldn't, but if I'm not too worried about if it's got a good structure, and I just want it white and I don't care, and it's a staple length like this long, like it's really long teas water, I will do lemon and baking soda. Make a paste and put it on the locks, and then set in sun. And if I don't have sun, I'm going to use the microwave. I'm going to put heat, because you want heat. Heat activates things. Heat makes reactions faster. Heat. So set in sun or steam or microwave. Heat somehow. Okay? So yellow fleece, that's one. Now, two would be gunky mohair. I talked about that, gunky mohair. Okay, I cannot stand, because what happened was that the government got involved. I love when the government gets involved in things, because they always make things better. So they decided to give subsidies to the Angora goat breeders in the United States, and so by weight. So of course, what do breeders do? And this actually happened in World War I, when we had amazing merino Rambouillets essentially, and what they did is they also subsidized them because they needed wool for the uniforms. And so farmers are so smart, they decided we're going to make it really gunky with greasy. We're going to breed greasy animals so that it's heavier. And then they made it like, it was like tar. They would report this Rambouillet, these Rambouillets as having, or these merinos having these fleeces that were like tar, black tar, right? So it's not the exact same with mohair, but it's kind of the same, because they have these chemicals that can get it out, right? If you're processing it, here's one of the things with processing, is they can get this stuff out. We're here at home, we don't have these chemicals. So we're kind of, you get the gunky mohair, and if you have hard water like I do, forget it. If you have soft water, you're way better off. But if you have hard water, it's a problem. So my hard water, which is city water, oddly enough, I have city water. I have to do things like, I dissolve like with like. The first thing that happens is I hit it with not furniture polish, furniture oil, like orange oil, or Old English oil. It's an oil, right? And you dump it on here. So I'll try it, because usually I can touch it and know. But if I use Dirty Rotten Bastard, which a lot of the time will fix it, but if it doesn't fix it because it's so disgusting, then I go straight to, even when it's wet, I start massaging this furniture oil in it. So orange oil, or I said Old English furniture oil. It's like lemon flavor or something. Lemon flavor, lemon scent. Okay, and then another one I use is this Pyrana, and this is a great one. This is my favorite right here. Favorite. Don't laugh. Fly spray. It's in a yellow bottle. Yellow bottle. This stuff, and why do I know I use it? Because I use this to clean my shears. Because I shear all my own sheep, so I have like 300 head. I shear them all myself, and you can't have your blades get all gunky, so I spray it and it just like pulls it off. So what I'll do is, if you put too much, you're going to be sorry, because you can't. Then you have to get the oil off, right? So this just pulls it off, and then I just wash it with Dirty Rotten Bastard after that. And this is for gunky mohair or super oily, merino or some fine wool. Cormo, something like that, because I don't want to wash it and wash it and wash it and wash it. I don't. I want to wash it once, maybe twice, and be done. So if I'm going to wash it once and it's still oily, I'm like, screw it. I'm just going to grab Piranha fly spray, spray some on it, put some shampoo in it, massage it around, rinse it off, and be done with it. typically, the thing that I used to use Dawn, you guys, because I thought, you know, what happens with Dawn is it actually can have a reaction with, if you don't get it all out, with the acid in the vinegar when you're dyeing, and it can make it precipitate, which is like, you get these white little chunks in there, and it's just not a good clean. It's just, it might, and you can also over scour, and I've never over scoured anything with Wash and Dye or Dirty Rotten Bastard. And believe me, because I own the company, when I put stuff in there, I put a lot. Anyway, then here we go to the three, the smelly buck, you know, whatever, smelly fleeces that you can't stand. Here's where I will, first you have to get the oil off. So I'll actually do this one. So I will do C. I'll do 2C. But then you can buy at your farm supply store an alcohol that's a higher percentage than rubbing alcohol. So it's not the one, remember when we were young, what was that? Was it ethanol? They used to have, no, what was it? Methanol? What was it? What was the one that you had and they would drink and go blind? Doesn't matter. Ethanol. And, but it's a higher percentage. I take that and massage that in it. And it just strips it. It will strip this smell off. So after doing this, I use that. So it's a higher percentage alcohol. You can buy it at a farm supply store. And I feel bad for people who don't, you know, readily have farm supply stores available. So 3A would be 2C. 3B would be high percentage alcohol. Farm supply. I think it's 80%. I don't remember what it is. And you buy it by the gallon. So it's not that expensive, really, considering, and I really like it because it also can clean your bong. Okay, so, I'm from California, sorry guys. So, and some people are like, what's a bong? You'll have to look it up. Okay, so this is the washing problems, etc. This is basically all I do, but I would just prefer you guys, unless you're getting it for a screaming deal, just don't buy gunky mohair, return it. And just don't buy bram fleeces unless you, like I said, you're getting a scream, or ask them, say, is this gunky mohair or is this smelly fleece? Okay, let's see. So mildew kind of is in here too, you guys. People like to say wool cat mildew. That's such a crock. And I spent a lot of time in the UK, right, brokering fleeces. I used to. I didn't last year, obviously. But I have to be honest with you, like the way their fleeces are mildewy. Because once again, the government gets involved, and so they have the wool board. They get like £1.70 or something is the most they can get per kilo of their fleece, right? And so why are they going to take care of it? They just like share them, they're like setting out in a barn with moths, and like, it's damp and dank, or sometimes outside in the rain. It's just like, yeah, some people have gotten smart and realized that they can actually make money off of these from Americans. So, but there's still those old timers that their fleeces are awful. So getting mildew out is kind of the same idea. You have to I go through the alcohol treatment when it comes comes to that. You can get the smell out, and every once in a while, I have been known to just have to use Febreze on the mildew after doing the alcohol, or some sort of essential oil in there to make it lavender oil or something, because it's sort of the wet dog theory again. Once it gets wet, you can kind of smell the mildewy, but not always. It just depends on how bad it is. If it's got black mildew in it, I just throw it out, because once black mildew's on there, forget it. Throw it out. Just get rid of it. Okay, let me see where else. I just want to look at my notes and make sure where I'm at. Okay, as far as scurf, you guys, okay, what is scurf? These are these problems here. I'm going to go to C4. Scurf is dandruff that typically goats get. And it is absolutely disgusting, vile. I can't stand it. And when my animals, if you read about it, zinc seems to be, if you read about it with the peer review papers, it seems zinc is an issue. And so I'll buy zinc, give them zinc, or zinc shampoos or whatever, and then put it in one of those giant spray bottles. It's like for weeds, and then spray all my goats. But it's awful. Scurf. Angora goats. Notorious. So I'll have a goat, I lay it down to go shear it, and I flip it over, and I see right in here is where the first place I see it. It's like sheets of dandruff that are like this big. You cannot get it out. Don't ever buy a scurfy fleece. Someone says, oh, it's got a little bit of scurf. If it's got a little bit of scurf, it probably has a lot of scurf. So a little bit of scurf, what does a little bit of scurf mean? It means that, so what happens is typically the most scurf is in here, under here, and they'll have it all over their stomach like sheets. But then as it kind of goes up the sides, it starts just getting a little bit of dandruff. And so I guess it depends on what you're using it for. Would that be acceptable? Not for, I would never pay if someone said the fleece had a little bit of scurf, it better be kid mohair, and it better be amazing, and it better be cheap. So if they said it's amazing, it's got a nice staple length, super soft, a tiny bit of scurf, I still want it to be like $10 a pound, like something absurd, right? But not $30 a pound. You can't get it out. Once it's you cannot get it out, and you don't want to. And somebody could say, well, when you're spinning it, doesn't it fall out? Okay, I don't want to spin chunks of dandruff. So I sure could like put alcohol on it, like do the whole thing as if it was a smelly buck, put the alcohol on it, and then it's like, then run it through one of those, what are they, dry it and then put it through those, what are they, those tumblers, and then doesn't the dry, it's not dandruff like human dandruff. It's kind of different. It's vile. There's nothing else I can say about it. You really can't get it out. But if it was for yourself and you wanted to make yourself a hat out of, fine, do it. But I just wouldn't suggest that you sell it. It's gross. Disgusting. Okay, 5. Lice. Once again, typically Angora goats. There's an Angora goat louse. I heard one time one breeder say, oh, all goats have lice. Okay, that's not true. Because you can see them. And like I throw away so much fleece because if I can't, once again, this comes down to minerals. This is what they hypothesize. They meaning like the experts, like people, veterinarians, people in the industry, people that, are in the Angora goat business, like commercially. Researchers think that it has to do with, minerals. So all my animals have mineral blocks, but every once in a while I don't get to them on time because I have to delouse every month. And if I miss that, then I'm going to have to do it for 2 weeks because that's a life cycle. So I hit them and then I have to hit them in 2 weeks again. But when you have, 120 goats, can you see the manpower on that? It's just like, and my back was hurt for like 6 months really badly. So that was a problem. I just ended up shearing them and not just throwing the fleeces away. And people are like, well, why can't you just give them away? I actually did that one time, and then actually I did it on something else. It was like a bunch of VM that had VM in it, and I gave it to people, and then someone wrote me like 8 months later and said that I'd sold this box of like large flat rate box to them, which wasn't true. They just had to pay the shipping on it, and then because they bought other things from me, and for some reason, and they wanted me to refund their money or like replace it, and I did replace it, but I did say, here's the other order, that was free, but here, just go ahead. So I just don't do that anymore. Now, I just throw it away. I don't give it to people. If it even has a little bit of lice, it's just, we're done. Because the lice are made of protein. These dyes are protein fiber dyes. So there is a picture I have from a really long time ago, it's like 15 years ago, where someone's like, what's this? And it was a picture of this green sharp, it was like a bright green fleece like this, and it had all these dots of dark green in it because there were lice. It was filled with, there was more lice than fleece. It was disgusting. So not every time. I mean, if you have a few, there's a few, but I don't know, how do you know there's a few? I mean, you see them in here. The second you flip them over, you see them under the arms where it's really, you can see them, but or typically like you'll see an animal, if it gets you see that its fleece is ripped out here, or they often get their teeth stuck in here. That's from them scratching lice. So it's just sort of, this is just like something you just don't want. Scurf, you don't want. Those are things. Okay, so let's go on to D. Let's go on to camelids. Camelids are very low oil fibers, right? So alpaca, vicuna, camel, llama. A lot of alpaca people, God, the alpaca people were brilliant. And then see, when 2008 happened, the pyramid scheme came to a crashing collapse. And I feel, bad, not the big breeders, it didn't affect, of course, but it's all the other people that were paying like $200,000 for an alpaca, and you get like a pound of fiber off of it. And the only way you could ever make that kind of money back is if you were a big breeder, right? I mean, really, I mean, there were people, you know, that were doing all right, but for the most people lost their hiney on alpacas. And but they were really good at their spinning, like the marketing, because people that they were doing those commercials because it was a tax write-off. So it was attracting people that had a retirement. Well, they didn't have a retirement for very long after they had camelids, but anyway, they had a retirement. It's like, you know, own these, and there's big doe-eyed things, and they're so gentle and sweet. My possum is more gentle and sweet than an alpaca, and plus I don't want to have a conversation with something to catch it. My dog's going to bite you if you don't go where I want. Like, I'm not going to be like, here's a peppermint. Like, people treated them like these. If you knew the way that they lived in Peru, people, it's absurd the way we treat them. Anyhow, they're an animal. And this marketing was genius, telling people, oh, you don't even have to wash it. It doesn't have oil. Well, everything that has hair has a sebaceous gland, so it does have oil. It doesn't have lanolin. Camelids don't have lanolin. That is true. But they do have oil. So it's, you know, I just don't like this idea of like riding the line where we're kind of lying. We are lying. Okay, there is no kind of lying. You're lying. They have oil. Don't say they don't have oil. Say they don't have lanolin. That's fair. But the amount of dirt, oh my God, if you have allergies, and they're like, you can spin it raw because it doesn't have oil. Well, go ahead and spin it raw and see. Like, I have adult onset allergies. And my eye the other day was closed shut because I can't remember what I was doing outside. There was something I was doing outside, and a bunch of dust was in my face, and my whole eye was swollen literally shut because of it. I can't handle this dust in my face. Once again, the particles, I'm telling you, particles, you shouldn't inhale particles. I don't care what particles it is. Dust particles from somebody's alpaca farm somewhere. You don't want their dust particles because, quite frankly, there is bacteria. There's things in there. You just don't want it, right? So I'm not spinning. If it's not oily, I don't want to spin it because all this dust is flying up. Plus, I don't want it in my orifice of my spinning wheel. So I wash this stuff. But you have to be careful because it doesn't have a lot of oil, right? So you're going to have to use something like Wash and Dye, where it's a conditioning shampoo and it doesn't take all of the little moisture that it has in it. I know it sounds like I don't like. I actually don't. If you want to know the truth, I don't like alpacas because I don't like that they're like these little prima donna things. I do like mamas. So you have to use like Wash and Dye because also it gets notoriously static electricity. And the problem with camelids too, for me, is that a lot of people shear when the shearer comes instead of when the animal needs to be done. So then you end up having a staple like this, and then you have a lot of ends. So I don't care what the micron is on something. If you have a lot of ends, it's never good because they poke out. So I, quite frankly, like animals to have, you know, a staple length that's like at least 3 inches, if not more, right? I like it longer because it's so much easier to deal with. It's just better for everybody. But, you know, typically, like I said, alpaca people shear when the shearer comes. I shear when my animals are ready or way past ready. Anyway, let me see. Make sure that you guys don't have a question. Okay. The last thing, actually, it's going to be, is this whole thing about, last thing is going to be about moths and carpet beetles. I have carpet beetles on my fleeces that are on my animals. June bugs get caught in there, potato bugs, and carpet beetles. So, like, the idea of a moth not getting in my fleece is not really realistic because there's moths flying around out there, right? So moths, but the ones I don't want really are moths and carpet beetles. The best thing, you know, I told you, I don't wash my fleece before I dye it, but the reality is the best way if you wanted to store something and you weren't doing massive amounts like when I dye stuff, you would want it clean. You'd want to store it clean or just make sure that nothing can get in it. And a great way to do it is if you have a big outdoor freezer or something like that, is you just put all your shit in the, you know, bag and seal it and put it in there and then freeze it, do a quick freeze, and then you're good because they're not going to live through that. But what they really like is they like dirty. They like, you know, the underarm area. They like the sweaters that cashmere sweaters we've worn and we haven't taken them to the dry cleaner. They like dirty fleece, essentially. I've actually bought stuff from the UK and opened it up and moths have come out. It's like, because they're storing it outside, you guys. I mean, this idea of the way people get so weird about their fleeces, and it's like, come on, you guys. Okay, I'll tell you when I talk about this in Fleeces Revealed all the time. When wool break and all these things really matter is when your staple is like 2.5 inches or 3 inches. Because if you have a break or like moth damage or something, and you only have something this long, and you have it right here, I mean, we have nothing to work with unless we're gonna like card it, right? Right? I mean, we you know, if we have, like, let's say we have 3.5, that's probably like about 3.5, right? So 3.5 inch thing, and we want to, you know, do some, like, I don't know, hand combed top, and we have a break right here. Well, now we're back to carding. That's a problem. But when we have Teeswater that's this long, and we have a break here, who cares? It's not going to make this yarn is never going to be, this yarn has got so many long fibers in here. If this gets mixed up in here, you know, it's not that big of a deal. It's not going to affect the strength of it. This, when you're here, let's say it's commercial top, and then there was a break, or you sent it and you wanted to have top made, which, you know. So, and then of course it's going to matter, right? But it doesn't matter on these longer fibers. It really doesn't. So if, you know, just doesn't. Not near as much as it does on some fine wool where, you know, you don't have a lot of surface area to make things strong. Okay, so I think that is to come to the conclusion of this part of this. So, question. So, because we're going to take a small break in a minute, and then we're going to leave the camera on so you can just walk away. We're going to give you, like, it's 1:36 on my clock. We're going to give you till 1:45. So that's like 8 minutes. 1:45, come back to your computer. Or you can sit there. Questions? Because I'm going to go get my stuff. It'll give me a break to walk away. Hi, Andrea, Randy, Anik, Brandy, and Lisa. Thank you so much. So, any questions before I start? I'm so glad to see you guys. I really am. Are you guys there? Could somebody just say something? Because I feel like you're not there, or like I don't know why. I can refresh that. Yes, what should you tell people if they complain about guys bleeding? Okay, oh, I love you for that. I haven't seen that. Okay, so wait, we're gonna extend it a little bit because I'm gonna answer this question. What do you do? I didn't realize I should have refreshed my computer. What do you do if somebody complains about your dyes bleeding? First of all, if you're using these dyes, in your description, you actually have to say, inherently, in some way, what I say is inherently. I like the word inherently. It makes me sound smart. But inherently is a good word. So inherently, these dyes they do not have superior color fastness. And there's the possibility that these dyes in heat, in hot water, etc., or agitation. But Andrea, I know you know how to dye, so I'm pretty sure you probably know which dyes, what batches of yours are going to do that, right? Like if you have rhodamine in there, we know that that's probably going to happen. Or if you made it super bright, or if it's a purple, you know, like let's say it's iris, you know, we know, you know that that's the chance. So I think that's what you have to do is you have to, I would never make doll hair with these dyes. They have doll hair dyes because those people with those Waldorf dolls or whatever, the amount of effort they're putting in, they want to wash their hair and stuff. So like dyeing for color fastness is an entirely different thing. Let's just go with I had a silk shirt that I paid $300 for. I hung it to dry on my laundry room door, but there happened to be a scarf there that was like a Louis Vuitton scarf. That silk took the dye from that Louis Vuitton scarf. Louis Vuitton. But if I would have been smart and thought about it, I would never have done that because I would have known this was like a merino wool scarf and this is silk, and silk, you know, is a magnet. So anybody that knows that these Louis Vuitton uses acid fast dyes, right? I mean, these dyes are inherently not color fast. We're not using Sabrosette. If somebody wants to buy something from you and wants it to absolutely be color fast, then you're going to have to go to Landis or Sabristite. You're going to have to go to something that has like metals in it. And then you can relatively, but we even know cotton, though, okay, the cotton dyes become part of the actual fiber and they bleed. So my point being, remember when Levi used to super saturate their 501s? And you'd wear them and your legs would be blue? Of course they stopped, you know, they learned that people don't really like that. And now they're something called the internet, and pretty soon they started realizing we probably should just wash them before we sell them. But a lot of people walked around with blue legs in my day. And so, you know, these dyes are not inherently, and if somebody's that freaked out about it, then, and every once in a while, I have a bad batch too. Actually, Lois bought some yarn for me. But yarns are different because you have to be careful, especially if they're, you know, a fine wool, if they've got like alpaca or something in them. You're steaming them, so they can, you know, actually they can run. It's just that, you know, the more saturated they are, the more chance. But every once in a while, I make a mistake too. I made a mistake with her yarn, obviously. She, you know, so, and it was beautiful yarn, by the way. I still have it, Lois. I believe I did send you some stuff, but I can fix it and send it. Anyway, but that's the thing, is that, you know, we have to understand that there's this point between ruining it and making it absolutely color fast, which is probably never going to happen with most of these things. So there's the chance, like with the Louis Vuitton scarf that was like $1,000, that it's going to bleed on something. Anyway, okay, so actually I'm going to change this to M48, I think, because I have to get my stuff. I know, I don't even know if that was helpful. Okay, hi. If you sell dyed roving or locks, okay, oh my gosh, Andrea, that just like compounded everything. The roving and locks, okay, Andrea, now it's like, that really becomes this choice between making it color fast and ruining it. See, that's the thing. If you want to have roving and top that is not super bright and use the dyes that we know are going to be color fast, okay. But if you want to have, if a person wants super saturated all the way through, like what I want to see, it's there. I'm sorry, I can't heat it enough to not ruin it. Nobody can. So a lot of these tutorials, I'm telling you, I have dyed tens, thousands of pounds of roving. I have. And I was willing to, what I did is I just started out, let's see how far I can go and let's see how much it'll take. I didn't care if I ruined it or not. So I ruined probably 100 pounds of top. I don't really work with roving. I don't like it. It has too many ends, and I don't like pilling, and I just don't like it. So I use top. So my point is that I really figured out where this range is. And so then I was looking, you know, you just want to see what other people are doing. And the shit that people do online that they do for free for YouTube is not real. You cannot do what they're doing to it. They're showing you something different than what they did if it's not felted. Because even the wind blowing it, Andrea, I can do something perfectly, and if my wind comes up in Temecula, which it does every day, and I take it out of the pot and it's hot, or the steamer or whatever it is that I've done and it's hot, and that wind hits it, it's gonna felt. This is how sensitive some of them are. All of them this way? No, but a lot of them are. Especially like if you put Tencel in something, like Tencel and like Polworth and like a couple of a mohair Polworth one. I'm telling you, there are some that felt. You look at them and felt. So if somebody wants something super color fast, then they're going to have a fiber that can handle the amount of heat it's going to take to make it color fast, as much as it could be. So if somebody wanted something super, super, super alley-oop color fast, I would have to tell them, well, then we need to do super wash, but easy in, easy out. So there's this thing too. Like super wash picks up dye so beautifully, but then sometimes it can let it go because it goes in, easy out. So you have to find something that can tolerate it, like something that's not super fine, like an 18 micron merino you would end up getting instead of a 24 micron merino, and that's going to tolerate the heat way better. Or Wensleydale, something like that that's going to tolerate. That's what I would do. Otherwise, you're just going to have to tell them every fiber is different. So if you have this one that's high felting, you're going to say may not be color fast in hot water, do not use for felting, unless you understand that. That's what you have to do. Okay. Let me get my stuff. So I'm going to put the thing. Okay. Oh, I missed you, Anik. So let me, so now, because I only have 1 minute, so now it's going to be 149. 149. Yes, disclaimers, my dear. We aren't machines, we're artists. And there's variation, and that's just the way it is. Awful hot out there. Oh my God, it is like so hot. It's like 100 degrees. It's got to be. Hang on. Oh, I've got to find my Hi, baby. Are you so hot? Honey, come here. Honey, you look terrible. Come in. Oh, you look so hot, Daddy. Come on, Daddy. Daddy, come on. Come on, Daddy. Come on, your old man. Come on, in. Daddy, come on, baby. Come in. You can come in. Come here. It's too hot. You guys, my dog's 15 and he's too hot. Okay. Try to make lollipop. Yeah, I had to let him in. It's too hot. It's way too hot for him right now. It's really hot. I feel like he looks so old right now. Starts meowing, we're gonna have to like boot him out. He's used to be a barn cat, and he has now made his way into my heart. I'm terrified something's gonna kill him, so he's very mouthy. Okay, you guys, I haven't dyed in over a year. I think it's, well, I mean, but like really tried to dye. I mean, I've dyed a couple things like for sale or something, but it's like where it doesn't really matter because whatever it is what I wanted, right? I haven't done this in over a year. And I will say, it might have been nice if I would have done this before I was going to be on camera, but You know, I like to just do things by the seat of my pants, so to speak. Dad, do I have any washing back? Yeah. Daddy's gonna get me some washing back. Like you know, there's people like Laura, who, you know, they'll die, like, she's, you know, and she's amazing. She's an amazing person. She's an amazing artist and amazing. She's a doctor. I mean, she's like just a genius. But she doesn't mind doing little, I like building this chicken palace because, with the reclaimed stuff, because I don't have to be perfect. I don't want to be perfect. I don't want to take 1 ounce and be like, every lock has to be perfect. Like, she'll do that. My husband will do that. And I love him because he'll do that, but we don't need 2 of me, like 2 sloppies and like gross motor skill people. I love that he's like a fine motor skill person. I love that she's a fine motor skill person. But I need to do big batches of things. I just don't want to pull out all the locks and sell it for $25 for an ounce. I'd rather sell it for a quarter pound for $36. You pick through it, and I don't have to do the tedium, right? So everybody, everybody's good at something different, right? I'm not good at this tedium. I mean, I was so pissed off yesterday, you guys. I have a fiery temper because I'm a fiery person. So the one thing I said to my husband, because we just started building, I have a lot of things for the Airbnbs that we're building. A lot of things. I mean, we built a whole entire area for a petting zoo. For this one Airbnb has its own petting zoo. Yeah, build everything. So, but I was like, let's just build it ourselves. All the money that we would have paid somebody will go to equipment. I was like, but the one thing I can't stand is if we don't have the right equipment, enough batteries for it, whatever it is, we better have it, right? And then the Jigsaw ran out of battery. I freaking, oh my God. Like, I lost my mind. Because I'm in the middle of trying to cut out the window and the Jigsaw. So, guys, I don't have the patience. Like, most people be like, oh, no big deal. You know, Home Depot's like, 5 minutes away. But you have to, like, I'm dirty, I'm filthy. It's like hot here. You're sweaty. I mean, it's just, the possum just urinated on my back. I just literally wanted to do it. And then, you have to wait for the, so he just went and bought a whole new Jigsaw. That's the kind of person I am. And so that's why, like, the way that I work, that doesn't mean I'm not a perfectionist. I am a perfectionist. In my work, I am an absolute perfectionist. But I'm not going to do tedious stuff. I'm just not. That's why I love Reading Method, because it's just not tedious. It's like, but actually it's funny because, I've spent a lot of time with Laura. She came over and I was doing oven dyeing, and it was taking forever because it needed to be saturated. And this fiber was just taking dye and taking dye and taking dye. And she's like, oh my God, this is so painful. I'd rather do an ounce at a time. She said, because I was there forever. I just kept adding dye, which it really did. But in the end, I didn't have an ounce. I had, 4 pounds. She thought mine was tedious, is my point. You're like, you got it, Natalie. We're not ignoring. She says, don't worry. I'm just getting this. We have to heat this up while I'm talking. Otherwise, I would talk, and then we'd have all this spare time to get to know each other. Okay. So. Guys, I look so old. I've aged so much in the last year. I almost feel like wearing a mask just so you can't see how much I've aged. You're like, why are you wearing a mask in your own house? Thank God California's almost over it. Like, some guy called me the C word because I had the mask mandate. Our governor's about to be recalled, hopefully. But anyway, because the mask mandate, they've decided arbitrarily that because nobody was getting vaccinated, because if you're going to still wear the mask, I mean, do you see the point? And plus, I'm a scientist and I know about viruses, and if you've had it, it's just like, it doesn't matter. It was all political, that part of it. But so arbitrarily, June 15th, you don't have to wear a mask anymore. Well, of course, most people just immediately in California were like, thank God, because like everybody's been cooped up. I mean, we're on super lockdown, right? And so people are just like demanding it. Well, I went with my friend to the store and she refuses to wear a mask, right? So she's not wearing a mask. I have a mask, but I went just to take a sip of water and I pulled it down and I took a sip of water and I walked by a guy. He called me a cunt. And I look at him and I'm looking at her and she doesn't have one on. And so then of course I fire right back, let me tell you. Take that. So then he starts like yelling that word at me, which it doesn't even bother me, I don't care. Anyway, my language. Actually, arguably could have been much worse. Plus he was disgusting, which I continued to tell him. And they were trying to throw him out, but he was like freaking out. But I looked at it, I was like, I'm confused. I still don't understand why he doesn't say anything. But then my son told me it's because in California, this is where we've gotten. This is how insane people are. That if you're wearing it kind of down, it means you haven't been vaccinated, so that you would need to have it all the way up. I'm like, well, no, what it actually meant is since the sign on the door does still say wear a mask, I just don't want to get in a fight with someone. Like, I just don't want to get in a fight. So I purposefully wore it so I wouldn't get in a fight. She doesn't get in a fight, but I get called the C word. Like, he actually called me several times, even in front of the cashier. They're like, we just want to get him out of here. California crazies, woo. Okay, so, Jackie, hand me the vinegar. I love my husband so much. Vinegar. I mean, I have aged. I actually went to a plastic surgeon. I said, could you please help me? He's like, actually, I don't think we have the technology for your face right now. I'm serious. She said, a lot of it's because I'm skinny. Blame it on that, not that I'm 58. No, it's just because I'm skinny. It's not that I'm old. It's hard in California because, you know, and plus I was a model, so I look at myself and I'm just like, oh my God. Boy, oh boy, it happens to the best of us, doesn't it? Don't worry, I'm going to explain everything. I'm just dumping. It's cheap vinegar, so just use it. I'm going to explain because I'm sure people are like, wait. The people that watch it later that are new are going to be like, she didn't say anything about what she was doing. But I did say the C word on camera. I used to be really careful about that. I don't care anymore. I've been in this business long enough now. Because I was called that. But my favorite part is in the parking lot of Barron's. This is Barron's. He did flip my girlfriend off. He was driving a Mercedes. She's like, oh, he's driving the same car as me. Like, really? Because we're in a dirty dually. All right. I love my truck. I've been driving a dually for years, but this truck I've owned for... My last one caught on fire, but... I've had this one for... I love it. I love black dualies, but I don't wash them. So they're just filthy. They're disgusting. And inside there's like melted lipstick and hairspray and more melted lipstick. Class 1, so we just did class 1A essentially. This would be essentially 1B. And this is one of my favorite, you guys. This is like the, and I just hope I don't screw it up, and it's possible. I'm just going to make a disclaimer here. Andrea, here's a disclaimer. I haven't done this in so long that, and I've been so incredibly busy, like making out with my possum. You guys, I'm in love with the possum. That I didn't have time. I just simply didn't. But let's see if I'm good enough that I can do it after not doing it for a while. Because the mother of all is the pot that tells you how good or bad you are, right? Well, how tight you are on your ship. So, mother of all. So, like, okay, you know, people are evil and horrible and mean and cruel. When my daughter died 5 years ago, can you believe that? 5 years ago. When my daughter died 5 years ago, you would think people would even be nice then. No, they couldn't. Like, somebody actually, her name's Gail. What is her last name? Someone will probably remember. Gail. She's a sheriff from, like, Sacramento or something like that, and I know her. And she meant to private message someone and say, don't ask me why she would say this, that we were happy my daughter was dead. It was so insane. Here my daughter, 16-year-old daughter's hung herself, and she says, but she puts it publicly to Carol Moriello. She sends it to Carol Moriello thinking it's private, and it's not. That's how cruel people are. But anyway, in the vein of that, like, people like to say horrible, mean things about me, which, you know, anymore I could really care less, right? They're not paying my bills. I'm paying my bills. And so, this mother of all is also called the rainbow pot. I call it the mother of all because it literally, quite literally, is the only way that you can tell if your ship is tight. And if you know what your dyes are doing, and if you can keep your dyes in control. Remember, we talked about consistency and depth and dimension. This tells on you. It's like a poker tell. It's like every mistake you make shows up in your results in this pot. And that's why I told you they have to be bright clown colors. Because when they aren't bright clown colors, you messed up. Is it possible to have a perfect rainbow pot? Here's the problem. It's a push me, pull you. Okay. If I'm saturated, remember, for me to get saturation, I have to add a lot of dye. If I add a lot of dye, remember, it's piling from here up. If I'm adding a lot of dye, the chances of it hitting this bottom, too much of it, and then the heat energy comes up and disperses it. So my blue ends up over here. My entire pot now is blue. So the push me pull you is, the more saturated I am, the more chance I'm going to make a very gross error. The more dilute I am, the more chance I have of a perfect pot, but it's not going to be wow. But this teaches you, I look at these colors that we're going to use. Here's what I'm using. I'm using a very dangerous one. I'm using turquoise from ProChem. I told you, this is a heavy hitter. This is very dangerous for me to even do this. It's very dangerous. Turquoise, we're using turquoise. We're using brilliant yellow, Dharma. We're using, I'm actually going to use Lollipop. I'm going to try and make Lollipop orange. Lollipop is the Dharma color. I don't know it very well, which is also dangerous. I like to just make my life interesting. Dharma, and I'm going to try to make it more orange by adding yellow to it. And then we're going to use fuchsia from ProChem. We're going to use, actually, it wasn't chartreuse, I apologize. It was radioactive, the green that I like. Radioactive, and it's from Dharma. I've used their chartreuse, it's okay. But radioactive from Dharma is going to be my green. So I've got blue, brilliant yellow, this is orange, this is going to be my red, and this is my green, my red, my orange, my yellow, and my blue. So what happens is, whatever colors you choose to use for your mother of all, your rainbow pot, those become your baseline of which to judge other colors in the same hue, right? Hue is the color, right? So, okay, so I judge everything. Fuchsia is such a great color. Every other red I actually judge next to fuchsia. Does it more color fast than fuchsia? Does it disperse more than fuchsia? Does it need a higher temperature than fuchsia? Every one of these colors rainbow pot. I'm going to come back up to this. Let's call these our cannons, our 5 cannons, right? Our canon colors. Canon of belief, a canon colors. And just canon of belief would be a 1N like that. Okay, so these are your canon colors, and I judge every other color next to them. And if you have to find what your canon colors are, because then you'll go, oh my gosh, you know, lime green I can totally handle, but the second I put in a key lime I can handle, but the second I put chartreuse in, it's like goes everywhere. You know, I really like, you know, if I put key lime in, it disperses all over my pot, but chartreuse doesn't, or whatever. Or that's how you have to fit. You use them as a baseline, because everything has to have a baseline from which somebody jumps off from, and you have to figure out what colors for your rainbow pot you can work with and work around, and they also become ones that you layer with, because later on in Ready Method, this is the very beginning of the very basic stuff, and then from there there's so much more about how to make things amazing. This is how to make things consistent and still have depth and dimension, and to understand the principles, right? So in these colors, what I'm trying to look for all the time is I'm trying to see how easily they strike. How much residual. Residual is what's left over when it strikes. And you're always going to have residual. If you saturate, you're going to have residual. That's just the way it is. Your pot is not going to be clear. How much residual. The more residual you have, the more dangerous it is, because there are 2 types of residual that I talk about later. One type will strike with new fiber, and one type will strike with time and or temperature. So in other words, it can actually still strike on your stuff. So it might be sitting at the bottom, this residual, that's just like pieces and parts of dye, but it actually can ruin your pot and you have to let your stuff cool. So while it's sitting out there, it can, like, your pot was amazing and now you left it to cool down, and now it's ruined because the residual struck. So this is how we're judging these dyes, is how easily do they strike, how much residual, and by easily what I mean is time. Does it take a long time to strike? Because if they take a long time before they strike, what happens is the die is moving. If I put it in here, it's taking a long time to strike, the die's going down like this, and it's like dispersing. And then the heat energy is coming up and dispersing it more. So we don't want things that take a really long time to strike. We want them to strike pretty fast. But we can control some of that by how hot our pot is, right? Okay, so now how much residual and if I call them if they are good citizens. Okay, a good citizen is someone that just gets along with its neighbor, which basically means it's these two things that it's good at, citizens. So a bad citizen would be rhodamine. A bad citizen's rhodamine. It takes a high temperature to strike. It actually can take over your fiber and take the molecular space and not let anything else strike. And it has a lot of residual, and it never is color fast. So it's also an amazing color, right? It's a little bit fluorescent, which fluorescents have a lot of problems, typically. So this is the rainbow pot. I'm going to go back up to this one, I'm sorry. And so what we use it for is a teaching tool. And when I was talking about the people are evil, is that my students would like put up that, you know, look at my rainbow pot and it would be perfect and amazing. And then someone like Kamaj or somebody would be like, oh, look, I can make a rainbow pot too. And then they would post it in their group and then people would be like, I can make a rainbow. They don't realize it's a teaching tool. I don't want clown colors except for the part where the clown colors show you when it's not a clown color and it's muddy, you made a mistake. You didn't add your dye at the right time. You added too much, you added too little. It teaches you everything you need to know. Every single thing is in this pot. And then I would just be like, someone would, you know, send me like, you know, this 16,000 remarks on, I can make one too, I can make one too. And it's like, you guys, 1,000 people wouldn't have taken my class if it was that stupid. Anyway, and then I would say, oh, by the way, and then I'd go on their group and I'd be, oh, by the way, I can help you with that pot, because they wouldn't be good. But they didn't know they were good because they didn't know that I'm not trying to make clown colors. We're all trying to make this perfect pot. Teaching tool. Where do you typically see your biggest mistakes? Where are biggest mistakes? Mistakes. You really notice it. If I had my dye here and it drops down here and my residual ends up here, when I dump my pot, it may look like a rainbow clown colored wig up here. Down here may just be mud, which by the way can end up being beautiful because it could be like khaki green and like, you know, a little bit of burnt orange, and it's going to be amazing to maybe, you know, cranberry at the bottom. It could be amazing to spin, but that's not what we're not making an amazing, like, you know, autumn pot. We're trying to make gross clown colors. So, and you're like, well, that's great. How do we achieve this, mother of all, Natalie? I am about to tell you how to do that. So the first thing is you have to take out your variables. So what are your variables? Think about it. Your temperature is a big one. Variables, these are things that we have to control as much as possible to make it easier for us to do our job. My dog pees there, I'm gonna get something right now. If I fire like my dog urinates on the floor, I just use ammonia. I figured out that's the best thing to do. It smells awful and it's very toxic, but anyway. Okay, so here's a variable. The amount of time my fiber can be on. If I have a fine wool or something that's high felting fiber, it can't be on the heat for very long. The temperature. The temperature of my pot is a variable. If I don't have it hot enough, my dyes won't strike. If you don't bring it to temperature, when I say bring it to temperature, what I mean is it must be at least at 212 degrees. Do I use a thermometer? Never. I don't need a thermometer. I know that, you know, I know when I'm boiling that I'm essentially there, right? So, but I can bring it to a boil, but I can't let it boil. Okay? So I bring it to a boil. The second it starts, I'm constantly turning down, turning up, turning down, turning up, turning down, turning up, turning down, turning up. Because if I rolling boil it, all of this residual dye at the bottom is going to disperse. It's already wanting to disperse because there's heat energy. But if I rolling boil it, it's really going to disperse. Okay? So my temperature, I want to have it as hot as possible when I put my fiber in so that I can start and get moving. Because the faster you get this done, the better off you are. Because we are trying to literally make sections of color without them commingling and no white. Okay? So temperature, pH. These are acid dyes. Acid dyes do not have an acid in them. They want a weak acid to work. We are using white vinegar. Why white vinegar? White vinegar doesn't smell like, it's not going to make your stuff smell like, what is it? Apple cider vinegar. I like it. It's cheap. A thing like that costs like $2. There's inflation. I have a feeling it's going to go up. But white vinegar that's just what I use. Of course, there's other things you can use, which we'll talk about in the chemistry of dyes, but this is what I use. It's white vinegar because it's cheap. Okay, we have to control pH. If we forget to put our vinegar in, well, here's a variable. Your dyes aren't going to work very well. Doesn't mean they won't. If you have an acidic water, some of them will strike. More. The fiber. Fine wool, medium wool, long wool, primitive, or an exotic. All these take dye different. The dyes strike different. The colors are going to look different. The dyes are going to strike at a different time, a different rate, a different heat, everything's going to be different. So you don't just swap out fibers just thinking, oh, my pot's going to be the same, my dye's going to work the same. That's not how it works, because we have these cortical cells on the inside of these fibers, and those are determining how fast we strike, etc., and how much it can take. And that's why when I do, like today, if I'd been working this whole last year, I usually would do a multi-fiber pot. I'd throw a bunch of different fibers in there so you could see how they pick up dyes differently, etc. But because I'm trying to really minimize my variables, I'm going to use a fiber that I know is going to take dye extraordinarily well, and it's not going to felt, and it's going to shine like the dickens because it's a high luster fiber, and that's a long wool, and that's Teeswater. Teeswater is like one of those ones. It just makes life so much easier because it's going to make a brilliant, bright clown color. It's going to not felt. It's already slightly felted. These long fleeces like this, see, they're already stuck together like this, but they're not high felting. Sorry, I didn't even give my husband a chance to, they're just, this is like a no-brainer. But I typically put a lot of fibers in there so you can see, but I just want to take out some variable. So, if you want to take out variables, you have to do things like that. Use the fiber, and it's hard for some people because they do raise alpacas or whatever. They're like, well, this is what I have, and I don't want to buy anything. I always have fleece that's like, that I'll sell you cheap. That's, maybe doesn't look amazing, but once it's like dyed and washed, it's amazing, because I want you guys to be able to experience, other breeds and ones that you're going to be successful on. So you can always reach out to Anne, which is Roberta, or me, and Roberta's on it, man. She keeps me. Because I don't check my email sometimes for a week or so, which is really stupid. Anyway, okay, so we've got the time is a variable, temperature is a variable, pH is a variable, the fiber is a variable. And one of the biggest variables actually is you. But the dyes is next. The dyes, these are a variable, and I told you this, they're a different molecular size and weight, etc., and they're all going to strike at different temperatures and different times. So, just because you have yellow, if I have sun yellow from Prochem, and I pretend like Brilliant Yellow from Dharma is going to act the same, I am insane, because that's not how it works. All of them work different. So how do you figure it out? Well, you have to use them. Nobody's going to tell you. Like, there's not a chart. Remember, these dyes, once again, are for professional. These are for, like, for China. These are, and they're just selling them to these other companies, or these companies are having to make them in these small batches for these personal users. But these are not what these dyes were designed for. They were designed for the manufacturers with this equipment that's amazing, that fixes everything, and your roving and your top doesn't felt. And here's the last one, and I said, wait, 5 exotic. Wait, 3, 4, 5 exotic dyes. Fiber. Oh no, yeah, right here. 4, 5. This is. That was kind of confusing. It should have been 3, 4. No, this would have been A, B. I'm sorry, C, D, E. And this is 5 dyes and 6 user. This is the last variable, which is you and me and all of us. We are all different users. We have different, this temperature thing, we have different heat sources. We have different altitudes. We have different water, right? All of these things matter. So what we're trying to do is take away these variables and trying to make them better. The best that you can do yourself is, that's the other thing hard about when you ask in a group or something, is that they don't have the same water as you. They don't have the same heat source as you. They don't, you know, my tendency to oversaturate is pretty high. They don't saturate as much as I do. And so I tell people these things, this time, temperature, pH, fiber, dyes, and the user. The only things that can ever go wrong with your pot ever are these 6 things. So asking somebody in a group is not helpful, because they'll be like, oh, it's the atmospheric pressure. I mean, people say the most absurd shit. These are the only things that can ever go wrong with your pot. Ever, 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 ever. And when I say user, I like to say error too, because if you didn't know the amount of time for the dye that you used, and you didn't have it strike at 212, and it's just hemorrhaging dye everywhere, well, that's user error. You know, if you didn't, the temperature and the time are very connected. If you didn't use these together and understand about your dyes, as I said, user error. If you didn't put your vinegar in, user error. If you didn't use the right type of fiber for what you wanted and you filtered it, user error. If you didn't take into consideration your dye, you know, and you used rhodamine and wanted something color fast, it's user error. Basically, everything in the end and your variables is user error. When you have a mistake, and like, which makes me really nervous, because it's possible that I'm going to make a mistake. I'm getting a little nervous about it, can you tell? I'm actually not that nervous about it, but it did occur to me right before I started. Like right before I started, I was like, Sean, I haven't done this in a really long time. And let me just tell you, it's not exactly like riding a bicycle. So D. So how to, for the rainbow pot, but we call it the mother of all because it is the mother of all. It's the mother of every pot I ever make. Every pot I ever make has, this is the first thing I do. I want to set it up. I want to set it up for success. I want to take out a variable. And what I do is, here we go. Here's my pot. And my water's just boiling. It's not even, like, there's nothing in it. Sorry. So not all colors are, this is not like exactly like a wheel, because some colors like to travel, so you have to account for that. So, okay, so here, this is essentially, you're looking down in your pot. This might be a little bit of an exaggeration. So, the first thing I do is I think about the colors. I want it to be a rainbow pot, so obviously I'm going to have all the colors we talked about before, but I don't put purple in there, and here's why. Without overwhelming you today, you have to understand, if you know any, okay, I don't know the color wheel. I don't give a shit about the color wheel. I know about colors because I've done this for so long. But purple is antithetical to orange. It hates orange and makes mud. When I say antithetical, it doesn't like it. It doesn't like yellow. It makes mud. Right? It doesn't like green. It makes mud. So if I have purple in this pot, I have orange here, yellow here, green here, blue here, and red here. More than half of my pot it's going to bump into and make mud. This entire exercise is based on keeping your colors crisp and clean. What are the chances I'm going to have purple though, considering I have red and blue next to each other? Very good. But if I'm perfect at putting my dyes in at the right time, I can actually make, without cheating. Okay, these lines here are imaginary that we make in our pot. And it's cheating to not saturate in here in lieu of not having crossover. Because they want to cross over. They want to do this and they want to hit each other. So think about that. Of course, blue's going to want to hit here. Red's going to want to hit here. It's going to obviously want to make purple here. But if we're really good at doing what we do, we can get it to not really have very much purple. Maybe just a tiny bit. But you don't get to cheat and not bring, and not, I call these your borders. You don't get to not saturate your borders. Your borders must be saturated. So there's no cheating. There's no white, more than 10% white is a fail. It's an F. It's a big fat F. So there's none of that. You have to saturate. But also, you have to anticipate, because you would know your dyes, and you know your dyes and which ones are bad citizens and which ones are good citizens. You have to anticipate which ones are going to travel more than others and which ones a good citizen doesn't travel. It stays where you put it and it strikes fast so that you can move on to the next one. A bad citizen is one that doesn't strike fast and then travels over your pot and affects everything. So I have to put my colors in according to what I know my dyes. I know this because I know my dyes, and it's taken practice. So I know what my good citizens are and my bad citizens, and I put my dyes in according to what my good citizens are and what my bad citizens are. So I know my good citizen would be brilliant yellow, so I put that in first. Have another color. I have another color. I want you guys to know that I literally was like so prepared for this class that I went an hour before class to get these Expo pens. Like, wow, you must live very close to Staples. I was like mowing people down though. I was like, get out of the way, get out of the way. I got a class, I got to get stuff ready. Okay, so here's number one. So number one is yellow. That's the first one I put in because it's a good citizen. My next super good citizen is red, but I don't put it in because blue needs a lot longer to sit. This turquoise isn't a great citizen, but it needs more time. Some dyes need more time and temperature. They need it hot and they need longer time to strike. We want them to strike. The faster they strike, the harder they strike, the less residual we have to ruin our pot. So I typically put in blue, and you could be different. Okay, I typically put in blue second. Orange, I really hate, you guys, because orange is one of those ones, it's kind of like purple. Orange is going to make my yellow what color? Orange. It's going to make my red orange, it's going to make my green mud, and it's going to make my blue mud. But today I'm using one that I don't remember. And I'm going to try to make it more orangey. So I'm just going to go ahead and put it where I usually do, which is about fourth. I usually put it about fourth. So 2 is blue, 3 is red. And I don't do it once, you guys. I go back over things. If they're not saturated, I go back over. 3, and I actually probably am going to go here 4. And I'm going to go 5, because this is going to be radioactive, which should be, I think it's a lot better than key lime. If it was key lime, I'd probably do this 5th. So I need you to look at this. Even if you don't know the color wheel, this is in order of putting them in. I'm going to put in yellow first, I'm going to put blue second, I'm going to put in, and when I'm making a really hard pot of a bunch of different colors, I actually map it out, how I'm going to put them in. I think, okay, wait, I remember that golden yellow reminds me the way it behaves of, actually fuchsia, so golden yellow is going to be pretty good. It's not going to have a lot of residual, it's going to strike pretty fast. Okay, I'm going to put it in at a time when it can, I don't have to worry about it moving around, maybe first or second, and then I'll move on to something that's a little, scarier. The very scariest one that has a lot of residual, I put in last. Why? Because if it has a lot of residual and it wants to infect my pot and ruin it, the longer I leave it in there, the worse off I am. So I want it in and out. I want my pot really hot, I want to put the dye in, and I want to dump it. Okay, so here we go. Yellow, blue, red, green, and orange. Here's something extremely important. If you make a very bad mistake, and I'm not saying that I might not, and you guys will just be like, Natalie sucks. She's really out of practice and unprepared. If I don't do this right, this is what's going to happen. Watch. I'm coming. Hang on, let me get these other colors because I think this visual thing is really great. Ready. If I make a mistake and I put too much yellow in, and there's residual on the bottom that's dispersing, it's going to creep up here into my blue, and it's going to make this green. Once you turn something green, you are not going to be turning it back to blue, unless you guys knew some of these other techniques that I do. But I do it if it's broke, fix it. I don't teach it to you in this class, but I will tell you it's still hard. You can do it, but it's still hard. So you're gonna have green here, you're gonna have green here. Green always migrates to here, and here it's gonna take up this much. Basically, almost this entire side of your pot is going to be green. And you know why it's not pretty? Because green does not love orange or red. It makes mud. So you have half of your pot is green and half of your pot is going to be mud. It's the most common mistake people make is either putting too much green in and your green will infect your blue and it will infect your yellow, or putting too much yellow in that infects your blue. And then you have green over here because someone will still put green in for some reason. Like if you infect your blue with your yellow, you certainly wouldn't put green in. You would start now doing like, okay, where could I insert blue? Certainly wouldn't be in here, probably anywhere in here. You'd have to pick somewhere over here, right? I mean, this is not, so that's a good thing to just tell you is that this diagram that I have here, if I effed it up and like somehow had this turn green, I would shift I'd try to get blue over here. So that I still, because I'll tell you, the pot does not look good when it's half green. It just doesn't. It's really, because typically your yellow will also become, it's just because typically what people do is they go, oh, I effed it up, I have green in here, let me just still put blue in it. But the blue, when it hits the yellow that came underneath, is making green. So you're just green, and then now you have all this blue and this green, and everything just turns, it's just a nightmare. Okay, that's one scenario that often happens. Here's the next one. I mean, and this doesn't mean you're bad, by the way. By the way, every time, you know what? I don't learn anything by my successes. I'm okay. I don't want to say that. I don't learn near as much from my successes as I do from my mistakes. So I want you to know that there was one Kyle. Her name's Kyle Bowser. She took my class. She'd never died before ever, and every single thing she did, it's like I don't know what to this girl. She like absorbed everything I said, and I've never seen such work in my entire life. Like she's just one of those people. But I quite frankly am not that person. I would F it up, F it up, F it up. Every time the teacher would say, oh, someone will do this, I would be the one that did it. Kyle, like, and then I have a lot of people like that if you get what I'm saying, but I'm not even a person that if I listened to me, I would get what I was saying. I'd have to make a bunch of mistakes. Okay, so the next scenario that's very common, so don't get upset if you do it. It doesn't mean you're a common person. It just means that it's so easy to do, to make these mistakes. That's what I mean when I say it's a common mistake. I always make yellow really big because yellow gets eaten up by everything. I make orange really small and I make red really big. Is that they will put too much red in, or too much yellow in, or too much orange in, and then this entire thing becomes orange. And that's bad because, once again, orange does not get along with green, and it doesn't get along with blue. It makes mud. The most common one's green, though. So as you're adding your dyes, you have to pay attention to how they're striking. Because like a person would be like, well, Natalie, you're telling us all these things that are going wrong. Well, I don't understand. How are we supposed to figure this shit out? We're just going to ruin a zillion pots. No, that's not. You are responsible for paying attention to how fast your stuff is striking. And the only way to figure that out is experience and paying attention to what you're doing. We don't just throw dyes in and just go, okay, we just dyed it. That's not how it works, okay? So, and most of the people that are in here, I've seen, like, you know, they're friends. So I know that a lot of you know. So let's, okay, wait, I forgot. You guys are like, where's No Man's Land? The people that know are like, where's No Man's Land? Okay, because later on you don't have to do this, but I even still, I'll probably do it today because I haven't dyed in so long. But I leave this section right here with nothing in it. And I call it No Man's Land. No Man's Land. And that's so theoretically this will be white, but it won't, because if you saturate a lot, you're going to end up filling it in. And then at the end, let's say it is white, you're lucky enough that you could get it white. You just start filling it in with stuff that you know, whatever color you think you're missing or not enough of. You just have to like figure out, knowing that, remember that your thing of purple, you know, purple is antithetical to green, yellow, orange, right? And that red is antithetical to blue and green, right? That should fill you up with all those. And blue, right, doesn't like orange. And blue just doesn't like orange. Doesn't like orange. So other than that, you just have to know those things. I mean, those are really important things to know. So I wouldn't go, if I had a space right here, I wouldn't go put orange right there. Or this thing was white, I wouldn't put orange right there, obviously. And I'd be very careful about putting yellow there, because if I put yellow there, I'm going to probably turn everything green. I mean, you have to, like, this is like a thing. There's some things like this color, understanding this color thing, that take a little bit of time, but when you make the mistakes, you figure it out pretty quick. So this is No Man's Land. We fill it in at the end. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to take a pot, and the first thing that I'm going to do, I'm going to put F up here. Because F is like me, you know, the way the things that I did at the beginning that I didn't, you know, measure. I don't measure. People say, I can't remember what it is, like a half a cup of, I don't give a shit what anyone says. I'm going to throw some shampoo in there. That's kind of what I do. However, depending on how much, I don't have like I just kind of dump it in to my own, what I know from experience. And you'll end up doing the same thing. How dirty is the fleece, etc. The vinegar, some people say it's like a cup to a pound. Forget that. Just dump a bunch in. You rather have too much than too little, let me tell you. So I just go, like, I'm doing about, God, how many pounds is this? I mean, this is like 3 pounds, 4 pounds. That's 3.5 pounds. I've got more in here. So, you know, I just go glug, 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 because I want a lot of vinegar in there to make sure that I'm not going to have too little vinegar. And my whole objective is that my water level is a huge variable. I do low immersion. Some people that have taken my class, and they think low immersion means no immersion. Okay, you can't have burning your fiber on the bottom. So the way I do it is I put my fiber in, and then I push. When it's sitting there, if I push down and I have this much water, so if I put my fiber in, I put my water in, and I put my fiber in, and then there's all this water on the top, that's too much water. I want it to be where I push my hand down and I can see water, or I can see a tiny bit of water above it, but that there's not a layer of water above. But I don't want it to have no water. It has to have it, because I need a layer of water as a buffer here, because the fleece kind of floats. So I want this part to see fleece here, knowing that my fleece isn't packed on the bottom where the heat's hitting it. See, I've like done workshops where I've had people that are teachers that have been teaching, and then I see their pots have so little they're just ruining their fiber. It's just felting because there's no water in it. And that's like, you can't do that. You have to, the objective is to actually have usable fiber, right? It's not to make it such a perfectly colored pot, but it's like a chair cushion, because that's what happens. If you make it too hot with not enough water, it's going to be a felted chair cushion. Seriously. Okay, Dad. So I know that I put my vinegar in here, right? You want to come over, Daddy? He's like, yes, give me a chance, little lady. My husband's so patient with me, especially yesterday when I was freaking out over the drill, or not the drill, but the jigsaw. I hate that I don't have gloves on because my hands are already, these were all splinters in here. I had, oh my God, so bad, but so you can't make them look any worse. So here, so I boiled it. There's a ton of glug, glug, glug. And now I'm just going to shove some fiber in. Here we go. Dirty fiber in there. And I'm going to shove, because I know it's hot, so I don't want to hurt myself. Right? I'm going to shove it in. If I don't have enough water, I'm going to put more water in it. Like if this is a fine wool, I wouldn't go dump a bunch of cold water in it, but since it's a long wool, I don't really care. Okay, see, I'm actually close to where I want to be, actually, if you want to know the truth. See how I said if I push down, look, I can see a bunch of water. If I push down, I can see a bunch of water. Okay, wait, I'm going to turn it down because I don't want to lose any more. Okay, I can't put any more fiber in this pot. I actually need to put a tiny bit of water. Now, the amount of shampoo, because this is like 3.5 pounds something. Of course, there's a lot of dirt in here. And I just, I want to get a nice coverage. So, okay, so I push down and I can see pools, but I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I am going to put a tiny bit of water in here because it is really hot. And I want it to give me enough. I want it to be on, but I want to be able to talk to you. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of water in it, and because it's a long wool, I can do that without it filling. Long wools can take a lot, let me tell you. And I'm going to use a beer rug to do that. I'm so liking I've been drinking margaritas at night lately, and I don't want to get hammered, but they're so good, and they just, oh my God, you guys. I love margaritas. I didn't used to, but my husband and I, it's our new thing. But then it's really hard to wake up in the middle of the night and, check to make sure there's no coyotes killing everything. That's still, okay, so see, so if I push, so like what I'm talking about is I'll like see one of the teachers that's been teaching this, and like it'll be like this much fiber above the water level. I mean, you just can't do that. So and it's going to start foaming. It's going to lift up because there's shampoo in there. So I'm just moving it around. Once again, I can treat this like this because it's a long wool. But if it was a fine wool, I wouldn't be stabbing it and we'll talk in the chemistry of dyes. We'll talk a little bit about why these don't felt like that. But I want to, make sure that, it's, got water, it's all hot. And when I do this, what I'm doing is I'm actually pushing down and making the hot water come up to the top. So remember, the hottest water is at the very bottom. What I'm doing when I do this is asking the hot water to come up to the top. Because I really, ideally I would like it to be all the same, because I heated the water up before the fiber was put in there, my water is actually hot, pretty hot uniformly everywhere, rather than like the way I was explaining earlier when you heat it up with your fiber in it. Here, okay, there, that's better. See how it's kind of floaty? I can see it's floating. Like I've got some space on the bottom, which I want because I want somewhere for my residual dyes to go. Now though, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift it up and out. Why? Because if I dump a bunch of dye in here, what do you think is going to happen if I put dye in here? It's going to disperse over here. It's going to run all the way around my pot. Look, I'm going to put it here and it's going to go, woo. So moats and berms. Moats and berms. If you want to make it easier on yourself. Hi, JD. Come in, my daughter's here. How was work today? So moats and berms. So I'm going to pull my, especially on the outside of my pot, I'm going to pull it up so my dye doesn't travel. Because when I add dye, this is important. I don't add it here. I add it here in the water because I'm using dry dye. So I'm going to pull this. I'm going to go like this, but I can control how far it goes because there's essentially a berm. That cat is so annoying, JD. Okay, so I'm going to turn it down because it's not good to get in the habit of, boiling your pot on the bottom, but it's simmer. It was boiling and we know it's super hot. So what I used to do, and what you do is you can take a chopstick and put it in the middle so you remember where no man's land is, and then put one, in this section here, here, and here, so you mark off your sections. I think I'm out of chopsticks because you guys are going to laugh if I tell you why I'm out of chopsticks, but I actually will afterwards if I remember. You should ask me, and it's funny. What I'm going to do is just put these clothespins on this because then, you know, then you can kind of remember where your section is. I'm just going to visually remember, kind of, because I'm Natalie. So, you know, my blue would be here, my red would be here, but I usually, like I said, I put my, and I'll put one on either side so I know that I have, I'd make like this would be my red with chopsticks. I put a chopstick here and a chopstick there. That would be my red. I know that my blue goes between here. Here. My blue goes between here. My green goes between here. And that's how, so I'm just going to try to remember it like that. So this would be red, way more red than orange. And then, to be artistic, this is just getting it done. This has nothing to do with the artisan, but I'll talk about it as I'm adding things in. And I want it to be, see, the second I don't have it boiling and I have it on simmer, see how it's not doing anything? It's not very, it cools off so rapidly. So before I start, I know I just already fixed my edges, but I still want to get that hot water because the hot water's at the bottom. So I'm going to push it down because I'm going to start. So I'm going to push it down. I'm going to bring my hot water back up to the top. It cools down so fast. That's why you're constantly turning your water on and your heat on and off, because it has to be heated. It has to be hot. So I'm going to get it mad right now. I'm going to heat it up. I'm going to get it mad. I'm going to hear it thump, and then I'm going to turn it down because, like, it's going to be seconds before it. This should, okay, good. So I pulled my fiber up. You saw that. I pulled it up. I pulled it up. I'm going to bank it across around here. I turned it up. I'm going to get it to heat. See, and I don't like all these pools in here. I don't like it. It bothers me because I'm just going to put dye in there and it's going to travel around. So I don't want that. And in my no man's land, I don't want that. I might have a tiny bit too much water, but it's going to evaporate here. Okay, and I've got so much fiber in here, you guys, so it's also challenging. The less fiber you have, it's easier. Typically, I mean, no, not if, I mean, there's a fine line between like a pound and a half or something is like kind of good, and I have a lot. Okay, so here. So now, what I want to do is fight first, and you also have to know where your hot spot is. See, my hot spot's over here always. So I know that when I'm working over here, it's going to boil here first, and you want to kind of work on your hot spot or move your pot and make a hot spot. So I want to do my yellow, but I want to do it not while this is boiling. I want my yellow to be in the hot spot. There's my greens in the hot spot, because I'm moving it. So I'm always moving my pot around without trying to burn myself. See, I want this right here to be where I start. I want it to be the hottest. See, it's going to start boiling. Look, see how it's steaming? Okay, now I can do that one. But I don't want it to be rolling when I'm putting the dye in it because it's going to disperse. So I told you I'm going to add it right here. And I have to watch it strike. When I first, what does striking mean? Well, when I first put it in, it looks like an egg yolk. And then it looks like a lemon. So look, so then I have to keep, look at, I'm dabbing it because I have to get the dye wet. So I'm dabbing. Look, it's an egg yolk, and then it becomes a lemon. Egg yolk, and then it becomes a lemon. Okay, and see, now even just then, I turned it down, and see, it's not striking as fast. And what happens is you're going to learn when these dice, when these dice are striking, and when they stop striking, you have to turn your heat. Okay, look, lemon. And remember, the top of the pot looks different than the bottom. Don't ever expect, I want t-shirts that say that. The top of the pot never looks like the bottom. So here, there. Trying to keep it, and I try to remake my boundaries because I'm pushing down all the time, so I'm pushing fiber away, so my triangle is not going to be a triangle, but I want to try to make it a triangle. So before I move on to my next color, though, I'm going to paint. This is probably the hardest thing for people to learn, is how do I know when to stop, when it starts slowing down. And you have to be, you know, you also have to be, it's relative to how much fiber you have in there, and it's the experience. There's no way to do this without the experience. Okay, so here I'm going to be a little bit careful because I'm going to be using turquoise, which is, I told you, very, very dangerous. But I really want to heat this up before I move on to turquoise. Okay, that's my hot spot. I'm going to be very careful about turning this to turquoise. I'm going to be putting turquoise, and that's my hot spot typically on this side over there. I want it to get really hot. Okay, there's where turquoise is going to be partially there. Okay, that's what I want. And before I move on to my next color, I always heat up the color I just ended with. which here is this one. Okay, so I heated that up really quick. Fuchsia, I mean, this is a very dangerous color, you guys. The tiniest bit you use, not fuchsia, but turquoise. And I want to keep it away from, see, I really want to get this over here, sorry. This is, see how dangerous it is? It's really, I put hardly anything in there, and look at it. So I have to be careful that I'm not going to mess it up. Okay, see, I'm spreading it really quickly. I want to hurry up and spread it and give it somewhere to go. I want to give it something, and I'm going to spread it into my green because I can make a beautiful turquoise, like a teal. So I'm spreading it. I can't just have a big blob of dye right there. Okay, there. See how it's getting, it started out super dark and it's getting lighter and lighter? That's how you know it's striking, see? You can see it. And I'm working as quickly as possible. And then if I have too much dye, I send it to the bottom by going like this. Notice how I'm not putting the dye here. I put it here in the corner. Now see, it's striking. And you have to be very careful to not, see, I like splash dye over here. I splashed my blue over here. But see, you can erase it. If it hasn't struck, you can erase it. Here. And I want it to, I want to make sure I'm saturated. You cannot not saturate. You don't get to not saturate the borders. But I'm moving it around and finding fiber, new fiber for it to, I start here and then I work out. But I don't go put a big thing of dye right there. I work the residual out. If I put full-fledged dye here, it's going to migrate everywhere. I know you guys are like, this is too much. For someone new, it's a lot. But people can do it, otherwise people wouldn't take my classes and be amazingly successful dyers. Okay, so I'm spreading it out like this. I told you I'm purposefully spreading it into the green because then I can have, you know, other colors too. Teal's good. The only color that's not good is mud. Anything muddy, which would be like khaki and, okay, I put a lot of blue there, which is very dangerous. So, but remember, I told you I was nervous about it, but now I'm going to hit right here so my dye can at least hit some of the bottom. And I'm going to move on to my number 2, my number 3 color, which we talked about. Okay. Now, see, I want to move this border back because look, I've got this yellow and I told you I keep spreading out because I keep pushing down on it. See? So I'm moving my yellow back and I'm going to have to extend my yellow over because it's moving, because I keep pushing down, it's moving into my green. Now, okay, I wanted a big blue. Don't worry, here we go. Turning it, turning it, turning it, turning it. Fixing my border, fixing my border. Bring it back, bring it back. See, now see how no man's land got infected? Don't worry, everything's fine. We just want this, and if it's okay as long as this makes into green. And I'm going to get rid of it into the green. Let's get rid of that extra residual blue into the green area. You have to get rid of it. You have to find some place when you have residual dye, you find somewhere for it to go. And that's why you start with big yellow. Now, boom. Don't even worry about that. Now we're going to move on. And then green will take up like this. I just hit this thing, sorry. That's going to irritate the shit out of me. Okay. Okay, there. I have to heat it up. Now, we're moving over to fuchsia. Fuchsia is almost like this color that I can just work off the heat right here for a minute. Here. Bring it over here. Move your blue back. Move your blue back. Move your blue back. Blue back. Move it back. Move it back. Over here you're going to get teal. We're going to have a little bit of purple. And if we're going to end up having purple, it better be a good one. There. And work fast. Fast. But this is such a great color. Fuchsia is like the world's greatest citizen. There. I just put a bunch in it because fuchsia is like, it's like the best. But I wouldn't want to start with it because it doesn't like green, as I told you. Okay, heat it up. I just needed it heated for a second. And then I turn it down. There. Go like this. Now it looks messy now, but wait. Because you have to go redo your borders. The only way to do it, because I'm working quickly, I don't care about my borders. I have to work quickly. I'd rather reestablish my borders later and right now have everything stay where it's supposed to stay. Here we go. Reestablish this border. Move my yellow over here. Hang on. See, and that we haven't done green yet. Move this over, move that over, and here you would end up having right here in this red, you would end up having a coral, a beautiful coral, if you can get the orange in here perfectly. There. And turn it off. Just get it to a boil, turn it off. Hang on. Turn it off. Put more. I swear, see this one you need a lot, which sounds crazy. You're like really putting a lot in, but this one you can't put a lot. The fuchsia you can put a lot. Right here I like to have coral before I get to my orange. Okay, now I don't really deal with this other color. I told you that. So hang on. So remember the next one is going to be orange and the last one's going to be green. So here, let's grab this lollipop and hope that it's not going to be horrible. So let's put it in right there where it's going. I need it hot right here to work on the heat. Right here, okay. Okay, here, there, right there. Reestablish this boundary kind of, because I don't want it encroaching too much on my yellow. Because yellow is kind of a crucial color in this. I want this to cross over into my red so I can get coral, the corally color. I have to push this, look, I need to push my purple back there. That's dirty fiber, don't worry. That's not green. So here, push that in there. I'm going to heat it up again. Your orange, it's really hard to find the right orange, and this might actually be a really good one, to be honest with you. Okay, here. Yeah, this actually is not being horrible. Brilliant, brilliant yellow, or brilliant, no, bright orange right now would have been a nightmare. See, I want it to cross, I like to cross over into red. Make coral, but make a pretty orange right here. Okay, I'm not going to put any more because it's making me nervous. This is a lot of dye. And then you have to you go back over everything. Okay, there. Turn it down. Bring it to a boil and stop. Because the only way, 212 is when every one of these dyes will strike. But it's time. It's not just temperature. Some of them will strike in 10 minutes, but everything will strike in an hour. If it's not struck at 212 in an hour, it's not going to strike. Okay, so here, now this last part of this puzzle, let me try to reestablish this boundary right here. Let's get it this way. Put it there. Try to establish this boundary right here. Keep it nice. See that? Let me tip it that way. And use gravity if you have to. If you think your shit's like moving over and it's not supposed to, just use gravity. I'm going to turn this up right here and get this orange to strike. That residual, I don't want it. I do not want it. So hang on. There. Get it to strike so that I don't have to worry about my yellow. Otherwise, I'm going to have to worry about it. But I can have this a little orangey yellow right here. Yeah, that'll be fine. There you go. Okay, yeah, get rid of it. You just have to get rid of it. Okay, move that. See, I've got a bunch of white fiber here where the green is supposed to be. And here's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to extend my yellow. Some residual like that isn't going to strike on that yellow very much. See, it's just like, it like washes off. See, it looks yellow, orange, and then you lift it up and it's not. But if I left it in there long enough, my dear, it would be not good. So here, let's make our green. Let's make a nice V. Okay, there. Move this over here. I want to make fuchsia better. Make orange better. Push it right there. Green, there. Okay, here. Now, the one I'm going to do, we're going to go back over it in just a second. Let me establish my boundaries. And right now, if I put green in, I'm going to have no yellow. So what I'm going to do is move my yellow over here. So right for this very moment, I'm putting yellow right here. Because I can easily fix this green with blue and yellow. So let's put yellow right here. Try and make a nice little orangey yellow right here. See how much that fixed it? Because it's not saturated right here. So put the orange yellow right here. Right there. Orange yellow right here. But if I put too much, it's going to hit my blue and make green. Right there. Right there. There. And I'm going to send it to the bottom. I'm going to send it to the bottom. There. Under the bottom. So there's yellow. Move my green this way, and I'm going to move it even more this way. There you go. Right here. And I don't even have to use any heat right this second. Here, go ahead. Move it. Don't want that. Don't want that green. Move that green right there. There. See, this turquoise has residual right there. There. Teal. You've got teal right here, green right there. See, my green was made just from the yellow and the turquoise. Here, see, I'll show you. The residual from this blue is going to make my green right there. But I'm still probably going to put, let's see, put that down. There's my yellow, the orange. There's my greeny. And once we get it, we're going to have to heat it up right before we stop. There's green, there's yellow, there's some orange, there's, I really want to put more red in here and more blue, but I have to be very careful, okay? Very, very careful, because this could ruin the whole pot if I'm not careful. But you have to try to make the purple a decent purple. You can't just leave it like half purple, like kind of a dull purple. There. Teal. Teal. Let me get that out of the way. There. The dye, some of the dye right now is just sitting on the top. Try to reestablish your boundary. Right there. Okay. And remember, this is like, because it's dirty fiber right here, so it's not looking as pretty as it could. Because it's dark. There. Here's orange. Orange. Yellow, green, red right there. Hang on, let me put it right there. Fuchsia, you have to layer a lot. I'm going to make the purple. Since I've got some, I'm going to make it. Send it to the bottom. Take some blue, send it to the bottom. Because I don't want it to be ugly. There. Lift it up. There's blue, dark blue, right there. There's some purple right there. There. It's really hard to see right now. For me even. So I just like will bring it to a boil and stop. Because once again, we can't leave it on here an hour. Because first of all, most fiber won't handle that. And second of all, it'll all just be traveling everywhere. So that's why we have to hurry. I'm just going to use a tiny bit of radioactive right here. But I'm going to bring it over into this. Right there. Right there. Tiny bit. And now you have to heat it so that it doesn't. Yeah. And then I'm going to dump it before it infects anything. There. Get out of there. I don't want to see my yellow. Right there. See, it's just sitting there. It's not striking. It's not doing anything. It's just sitting. That's why you can go like that. If it hasn't struck, you can actually take it off. People think the second it hits, it's striking, and it's not. Okay. And typically, you would let it sit. But, let me see it in here in the light. It's hard to look at the camera right here. And let me make sure it's going to be. And you want to set your dark colors downhill from your light colors. So like my dark colors, my sink, I can see, you know, the drain's there. So I can see that my dark colors, I want them downstream from my light colors, or I won't have any light colors left. So like when I lift this, I still have yellow. I have a light chartreuse. I'm just making sure. I want to see a yellow. I want to see more yellow, but it's very dangerous to do that. I'm actually going to put some yellow in here. Okay, I just had to see it. Sorry. Okay, let's go back for just a second. Because I have enough of the, I have enough blue. I have purple. And then this is moving over between you, okay? There, yellow. Right there, right there. See, there's yellow right there. It looks like that residual, but see, there's a bunch of yellow right here. Okay. That's the hardest thing, is keeping your yellow. But nobody wants a bunch of yellow fiber anyway. That's why I start with a lot and end up with a little. Because the last time I wanted a bunch of yellow fiber was never. Okay, here. You paint it, you put it on, and you just hope to God it doesn't go over to your green. You cannot let it go over to your blue. If you put too much, it will. There. And you heat it up. So let's reestablish. Let's reestablish. 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 There. Heat it there. Heat it here. Heat it there. I want coral. I've got orange. I've got yellow. I've got teal. I've got green. I've got chartreuse. Over there. And there. Now I'm going to let it sit here. Yeah. That's good. There. There. Okay, now things are calmer. It's fast and furious. It's really, it's crazy because you have to work so quickly. And at the same time, you have to know, like, whether or not things are at the bottom or not. And see, like, okay, so I can see the dye is at the top. I can see dyes at the top in the water, the residual. I can see dyes in the top. But you can't, what'll happen is after we let it sit, it's going to turn to milk. Watch what's going to happen. Actually, let me, while it's still hot, put this on it. This is fuchsia. You couldn't do this with another color, but you can do it with fuchsia. Fuchsia is just an amazing color. And it's so good. It's the best red there is, in my opinion. But it needs help from other things. You can't, you have to overlap it with other things like the orange, etc. Okay, here I'm turning it. So there's the fuchsia in there, right here. See, right here, right here. Here's the orange. Here's the yellow. But I'm very careful. I really am nervous about putting any. I'm going to put a tiny bit of orange. Makes me nervous. Orange is evil. Orange really is evil. Orange and green are evil. Okay. This is touching up. But as long as okay, so I'll show you why I know it's okay. Because I still have blue. I have like a foresty green, I have like a delphinium, I have like purple, I have red, I have like coral, I have orange, I have yellow, I have chartreuse, and then I have green. So, and here in no man's land, I'm sure I have a little bit of mud, but as long as, okay, so once again, it's this choice between how much I saturated it and how much I saturated it, and how, if you saturate it, you're going to have, it's not going to be perfect. But the only choice is to not saturate it and have white. So when I'm doing people's tests for this, for the teacher, I mark them off for white, for being safe, because we're not here to make things safe. We're here to learn how to dye super saturated. Anybody can put too little dye. Anybody can put a tiny bit of dye and have a perfect pot, and have like a pastel-y pot, or, you know, pieces of white, specks of white. But to do your boundaries like this, and to saturate everything, that's what separates the men from the boys. Like, your pot has to have dye in it. So remember, I was showing you before, I don't have any spoons, so the thing is the reason we don't have chopsticks is my children kept eating in the rooms, and I went to get forks, and I didn't have any forks, and I just bought 24 forks, so I was so pissed off. I took all the silverware upstairs, and so they started eating everything with chopsticks, so my chopsticks are gone now. Because everybody's eating I can't show you anything like with a spoon, because there's no spoons down here. Because I was that mad. If I'm going to buy, and the forks are expensive, if I'm going to buy that and I can't even use a fork, then I'm keeping them up in my room until you guys are more responsible. So so here's what the problem would have been. Okay, and here's some residual. See, it's getting into my orange. This is the residual that with time and temperature might strike. But see, when I touch it, it's on this, but it's not on that. That's why you can't, you're supposed to leave your pot to make your, okay, The best thing to do is to always leave your pot to cool, but you could ruin it if your residual ends up striking, and that's just knowing your dyes, right? That said, look at how much dye it looks like I have in there. But this is not, I can already tell it's not too much. How do I know? Because I'm experienced. This will all sink to the bottom and become, see already it's becoming milk. See how it looks like there's a cafe latte in there? That means it's pieces and parts of dye. So, and don't forget there's a ton of dirt in here. So I'm going to let this sit. And right here, this is residual, but this residual isn't going to stick on this yellow fiber because I didn't put too much. I just know. I just know because I'm experienced. I'm still going to have yellow fiber. But if I was worried, I would pick it up like this. I could pick it up like this and shift it just a tiny bit to make sure that the residual didn't hit it while it was cooling a little bit. Okay, see the latte thing I was saying? See how it's getting latte-ish right there? It looks like dirty water and a tiny bit of dye. If I let it sit long enough, this would look totally like a cafe latte. There would be no dye in it. All the dye would be at the very bottom. And that's how I know that don't have too much dye. Plus I can see that I'm not, I mean, I could have made this darker if I wanted to, but I would have ruined the pot because I haven't done this in a long time. Now see, remember when I told you there's teal and all these other colors? See? See the chartreuse? All the different greens and the blue. That's the artistry. While I'm trying to like teach you something, I always, you know, once again, it doesn't matter if your pot looks like crap. Tell you when you have to worry is if I would have went like this, watch. If I went like this and a bunch of green came up on that side, on my orange side, that means I messed up. And I've done it about 1,000 times, by the way. If I went like this and a bunch of orange came up over here, that means I messed up. If I didn't use a lot of dye today, I could have perfect triangles. But when you use a lot of dye, you can't have super saturation and have complete perfection in your lines. It's just not possible. But you guys, the gold standard is saturation. So you start out not ruining your pot. Start out trying to, you start out trying to, whatever makes you more comfortable, but don't. But you have to know, you guys, that your ultimate thing is saturation. Because anybody can undersaturate. Any Grammy, any first person, anybody can undersaturate. Like I can have a perfect pot. If I want to undersaturate, I'll just put a pound of fiber in there and just make a pot that's a perfect clown wig pot. But that's not what we want. We want things to be these deep colors that nobody can get. Like it looks so good right now, actually. Okay, wait. Well, I'll just let it get to milk. I'm going to let it get to milk, and then I'm going to show you what I mean by milk. Because milk is when you technically... Okay, so if I'm worried about my saturation level and how much dye I have running around my pot, I will dump it. But you're way better off with your colors letting it sit. You might have more mud, so either on the bottom or in the middle where there's crossover. But those colors... But then you just make note of that and try next time to tighten ship a little bit. So like what I would do, so how would I do things different today? Well, I would have done a pot beforehand. I would have probably used less fiber. That would have made my pot easier if I would have used less fiber. Like instead of everybody used maybe 1.5 pounds. I would have used not a dye I don't know, lollipop. I don't know that dye. So I would just, that's how I would tighten ship. That's what you have to do. You take your variables when your pot is not perfect, and then you start looking at it and tightening it down and trying to take out the variables, those 6 things. Well, they can't take out you, right? But the other 5 things you can take out. You can take out a dye. You can make sure you have time and temperature. You're faster, or you're hotter. And it's hard if you're on a electric stove. But is everything okay? Oh, questions. John wants me to ask questions. But this is really important because I'm going to have him. But like if I have a little bit of crossover in the middle or on the bottom, it doesn't matter because that'll spin up amazing. It's just this teaching. It's going to teach us what I did wrong, and it's going to teach you what you did wrong. So after it sits, then I'm going to dump it, and you're going to get to see me like it's like seeing me with my bikini on, which let me tell you right now isn't pleasant. It actually looks like my husband's been beating me because look at my bruises. Like these bruises are from working outside and like, it looks like someone's been grabbing me, but it's from carrying wood and like, the cat is going to just irritate me. Questions? And I will grab my glasses. You guys, I lost these glasses. They were brand new. I was so pissed off at myself. I didn't know where they were. And when I was looking for one of my cords today, I found them. I've been out without them for like 6 weeks, and they were brand new prescription. If I didn't have this class today, I still wouldn't know where they were. I just had to let go of it so I didn't get pissed off. But I get so mad at myself because I pretty much lose everything. Okay, so here, questions. Okay, sorry you guys, I haven't been keeping because I'm sweating. It was so hard.
No need to apologize.
Oh, no need to apologize. Siri's so sweet. Okay, okay, you guys somebody must have a question. 2 whole hours. My boobs are sweating. I'm like, that's great. My jacket is on Monty. It's actually one of my favorite jackets. Where is it? There's no questions. You guys, come on. Must be one question. Yeah, your stuff sucks, Natalie. Can you make it better next time? No, I don't know. Maybe. Hello, hello. Okay, let's see. So I want to just get to the milk and dump. I mean, I would let it cool a lot longer if I didn't just want you to see the milk. And we're not quite there. But we'll get there. It looks so much. See, Dad, to me it's just weird. Why does it look so much more in, like, it looks like triangles now, but before it didn't look. It's weird. See? It's like in triangle. It all of a sudden made its own triangles, and I didn't do anything different. It's because I'm making triangles. It's just it's just not, until it's striking, you can't tell. I'm adding the dye, but it's actually fascinating. Doesn't it look more triangulated now? Like these sections, and they're always gonna have variation. Like the objective isn't to have like orange here, red here. You want to always have gradient. You want to have a gradient, except you don't want mud, which it's hard to see that when it's filthy fiber. And this has a shadow on it, but it actually was 2 seconds ago yellow. See how that's almost like the milk. There's nothing, you see how the dyes, there was so much dye there before. See? It literally, right there, see, it looks like dirty water. Dirty water? Okay, I'm gonna dump it. Just because we got to that part and you guys have been here for 2 hours. So watch how much dye is gonna come out. You're gonna have a heart attack. And I'm sorry, I can save that dye if I wanted to and use that residual on new fiber. If it was going to be a great color, but it would be mud. Okay, so when would it be a great color? If I was making a pot that the colors kind of all got along. But see, okay, so I'm going to look in here. Wait, I want to dump this not on. You don't want to dump this color on your yellow. You see my point? Look at all that dye. This is how every pot I've ever made comes out because I saturate. So you can't be afraid of saturating. But see now how the colors are getting clean and my yellow's yellow? See how my yellow's yellow? See, it looked green before. And there is green in it, obviously, because it's next to green. But I've also got yellow. And I told you, that's why I make a giant yellow, because it's going to get eaten up by everything. And look at how my orange is orange and not mud. So here, let me just, I don't want to dump this stuff on my yellow. Ouch, shit. Sorry, you guys. I told you to get tongs, and then, of course, I don't have any since I've stolen everything so my kids can't have it. Right there. Okay, so hang on. Let me see if I can find tongs, because this is really hurting my hands. Okay, like for not doing this for a year, I actually don't hate myself right now. Okay, see, there's some white, but I put a ton of fiber in there. Okay, there's yellow and there's orange, and I'm going to spin it and then bring some in. or I'll take a picture of it later, but basically I have, you know, once it's clean, it'll brighten up tremendously also. And then there's the blues and the reds, and oh my God, it's so hot. There's so much fiber, you guys. It's a lot. That was a lot of fiber. But I told you, I don't want to make it, you know, I don't want, if I'm going to do it too, I'm going to make a lot. I'm going to make a lot. But that's how much, but see how the dye here, there's really, it's actually, there's not that much. That's not that much. And I can't, you do not put cold water on this. I would never do this like this if I wasn't trying to show you right now, just so you know, could be assured that, you know, that's not muddy. Here would be a muddy, well, that's not too bad. A muddy piece. I'll find a muddy piece. Okay, I'm going to let it sit here for a second again. Because my red's under there. Ah, shit. It's hot. This is where you can really tell whether you've messed it up, is in your oranges and in your reds. Because your orange would be like a pumpkin instead of an orange. Okay, but see, that's really pastel-y. It's still pretty, but it's because there's so much fiber in the pot. Okay, let me put it in a spinner. It's going to brighten up considerably. My spinner's almost dead, so hopefully it will be able to get through this. It's really almost dead. Oh, it's going to turn on. I'll tell you that. I have that like $680 one, but I've just like trashed it badly. Okay, so that hurts so bad. So many. I mean, if I was smart, I would have like done it like, who does that? Who does like that much fiber? It's like dumb. Well, if I'm gonna die, I may as well like really do it. Go for it. Be right here. spinner won't spin it because it's too heavy, but I just squeezed it. But here, I didn't even rinse it. I literally dumped it and put a little tiny bit of water in. I'm going to show you how much dye is in here once. You can't believe that there's that little, look at, there's that little dye in it, and I couldn't even spin it. I can, okay, just to let you know, I can handle it like this because it's a long way. But you could never do what I'm doing to it if it was a fine oil. But that is nothing. Like that would spin out with no problem. I'm gonna have to order one because it's so annoying. But what I'll do is it'll look a lot better once it starts to dry because you can't see the light reflecting. And I would give myself like a B minus. Actually, maybe I'd give myself a little better because there was so much fiber in it. But I will tell you that there's not much mud. There's a couple of places where it was probably the middle, where like right here, that would be like where the green, and that's what you do. You have to go back and you have to say, well, what happened? Well, under here, I didn't get enough saturation with the fuchsia. So what happens is that little bit of residual from the green comes over. And that's what I love about this, especially when you have really long locks. You can totally see everything that happened. Like right here, what happened was that the purple and the green ended up going underneath with the orange and hitting. And this will be amazing to spin, but it's not the point. The point is that you want to have bright, yellow, you want to have red, you want to have green, but you want to have all the other colors in between. Like you want to have this variation of like the chartreuse. And see, even here you can see like here's where the purple, and that's why I said purple sucks, because it's going to go underneath. It looks amazing, but you're trying to make your colors have depth and dimension, and you're also trying to keep them from commingling. You don't want commingling. And the more you saturate, the more chance you're going to have of crossover and problems. And my whole thing is saturating. And then, like if I did another pot, if we had time, I would do another pot, and I would then go and do a lot less saturating and show you how closer you can get to perfect. And maybe at the beginning class tomorrow I'll do that. I'll do one where I just do a less saturating but the colors, you'll never achieve colors like this, and you'll never achieve colors like this, ever, if you don't learn how to saturate. There's no way you can make these colors. So it's this, but you want to use the mother of all to learn how to use your dyes and to learn how to tighten down your ship so that you can make these colors without having a pot of complete and utter failure. Like, right? Because no matter what, the color, every single piece of fiber I have is still usable and not an ugly, gross color. And that's what you're trying to achieve. Once again, it doesn't matter how pretty something is or how saturated or unsaturated it is, if it sucks. You have to have it so it's usable. So, like, I'm not happy that, that this is cranberry, but it doesn't matter. It's still totally legitimate color that somebody would love to spin. And when it's dry, the luster is going to be amazing, because Teeswater and Wensleydale have a luster like silk. And it would be so easy if my spinner worked. I wish Roberta's husband actually is an electrical guy. He could fix it. But I'm just going to have to order one. Anyway, okay, you guys. So that's it for now. I'm going to check and see if you have any questions. And then we're going to reconvene tomorrow. That's what we're going to do. At the beginning of class, I'll do another mother of all. I'll do one that's not as saturated, and it's probably going to be perfect, and but it's just not going to be saturated. But it's not going to have white. If it has white, you can't. If it has white, it means I did a shitty job. How does the fiber feel when you've burned it? Oh. How does the fiber feel when you've burned it? It's okay. The only way I would know if you burned it is if it felt it. Because what happens is, like, that's what teachers would do. Like I told you, like if they're trying to, because obviously if we have high heat, it's going to strike faster. So if you have no immersion and you have high heat, but they literally would send me chair cushions, and obviously the person doesn't pass, right? Because the fiber has to be usable. It doesn't matter how saturated something is if it's ruined, right? So I think that's the answer, is it's felted. But remember, a lot of the fiber I use is already felted because it's this long. It's been on the animal for a year or more, or 18 months, laying down on it, so it's already partially cotted. And that's to be expected. And that's the thing that happens with, once again, if I want to hand paint, if I want to dilute my dye and hand paint an ounce of locks and steam it, and the locks aren't touching each other, they're going to be perfect, right? But you still can only get so much saturation. And the thing with doing that, here's the thing. With complete control, you don't get, there's no freedom, right? There's no freedom to have these nuances that come with, like even the nuances of having a pot that has cranberry in it, right? Now, of course, what did you just learn? How to make cranberry. Well, how would that happen? Well, clearly, you have purple, and then you make, right? Okay, if I want to make cranberry, I've got purple, and then I have an orangey red. And when the orangey red hits the purple, I have cranberry. Right? So like that's an exercise that's really important. If I'm hand painting an ounce of locks, first of all, I'm making a lot of money, so it would be great. But I'm also not, because I don't have any freedom, I don't have any room to figure out things that I wouldn't have known. I already knew how to make cranberry, but I'm saying that not everybody does. Okay, here's a perfect example. Because even if I make a mistake, because I understand what's happening with my dyes, if I have orange and I have just the residual of the green moving over into the orange, but my orange is pretty deep, it starts to turn copper. So all of a sudden, okay, for a mother of all, it sucks, but it doesn't matter if it's usable. But it'll be much like that purple, where it's that place where it's not really purple, it's like kind of a, I don't really like it. So then if you add on golden yellow, it is copper. So the mother of all is a teaching tool, and the objective is to figure out how to control your dyes and have this place between super saturated and perfection, clown colors. And for someone, and so we take the variables. For me, I said, like, I used an awful lot of fiber, because that means if I have this much fiber, look at how much I have to, if I have this much fiber, I have to get through this much to saturate everything. So I'm just going to keep adding dye, which means I'm going to take longer. So when I told you, the longer you're there, the more chance you have for error, right? And then if I use dyes I don't know, like, I know turquoise is a beast, and I know, but I'm just kind of I just kind of do stuff. Oh well, I might not be perfect, but let's just see what happens, because I learn a lot from mistakes, right? And you learn a lot from my mistakes, or if it's not perfect. But, but then you tighten down ship and go, okay, well, you know what? Okay, well, I know now I have to be careful with this, and I shouldn't have as much if I want to make it, if I really want to make my confidence up, then I'll use less fiber. Then I'll use, every color I'll know, and then, I'll just tighten ship. But for creativity, you can't have a tight ship like that. To have creativity, you have to have some error, because those errors, some of the best lessons that I've had are when when I go and I teach in person and people mess up their pots, because then I have to fix them. And let me just say, because I don't want someone to spend all that money and then have their pots be shitty. Even though we're doing like 7 of them, they get really bummed out when 18 people have a beautiful pot and they have crap, right? So then I teach them, but in that teaching, everybody learns so much how to fix a pot, and I explain what went wrong and why this happened. And because if every single person came up with a perfect, that's what I want. I want everyone to have a perfect pot. But when they don't, we learn more. That's just the reality. But anyway, but cheer up, that actually, I answered your question and just started going on and on. I'm so hot, like literally I'm sweating balls. But are there any other questions? But those were good questions, Andrea. But I think besides felting, that's what it is. I don't think you can really, unless you like literally burnt it, like singed it, which I've done in the oven, by the way. I've actually burnt it in the oven. Like I didn't put a lid on it, and then the heat from the top, and it was burnt, like literally burnt. But felting's pretty much it. I think you can kind of coarsen it a little bit. I think you can. Like you can piss the scales off, I think I've done that, but I think mostly in the oven I've done that. I don't think I've really done that on the stovetop. If you have enough water in there and you don't spend a ton of time, if you have, I told you, the buffer, because underneath there's like this much water, like the fibers, my fiber isn't touching the bottom of my pot. I was lifting it up, remember? Like I had water above it, and then I lift it up so that I know that I have a layer right here on the bottom. The bottom of my fiber is not muddy. First of all, that's amazing. The part of my, in any parts of my just refresh your page. It should be back. I see it's back. Is it back? It's back. Sorry, you guys, we went offline for a second. Okay, anyway, we're back. I can't remember what I was saying. What was I saying, Dad? When I was so rudely interrupted by the internet. It doesn't matter. The whole thing is that just know the mother of all, you just want to keep your stuff tight. And when you're trying to be creative, you don't, the mother of all is the way I set my pots up. But I can't be too tight, because if you are too tight, your creativity is gone. So perfectionists are awesome if you want perfection. And you don't want variability and the nuances of mistakes. How many things were a mistake? Wasn't Teflon a mistake? I mean, there's so many things that have been a mistake. Penicillin. There are so many things that I could go on in life. I want as my partner, as my husband, I want a perfectionist, because he helps me keep my ship tighter, right? So that I don't have so much freedom. If you have too much freedom, you don't have consistency. People that are too artistic can't get consistent. So this is this place, there's a place between being too artistic with no consistency, so there's no repeatability, and being too tight, where everything, you think that, not you personally, but a person thinks that everything has to be perfect. Perfection is overrated, 1000%. This is a creative process with artistry. And so we have to understand that in that artistry we just want to know that when we need to do something perfect, we can. Like when you don't want to felt your top, you can do it, right? You just want to know, but then, if I want to make some weird like color combination of it, and I realize, okay, I have to accept it's going to run a little bit, because this is an outrageous color combination that's amazing and spins up amazing. People are going to have to understand it's not going to be perfect. It's going to either A, be felted, which I hate. I don't want to draft and have it stick. And I don't want them doing all this shit to it, splitting it and doing all this stuff to it. I would rather have it be slightly uncolor fast. I don't mean spin it and have the dye come off of my hands. That's not what I mean. When I say slightly not color fast, I'm not saying dye comes off of my hands when I spin. That means the dye didn't ever reach temperature ever, right? What I mean is that if I wash it, it's going to bleed a little bit, because what I could do, what's better, is to have this beautiful color combination that's amazing, and I make a yarn out of it. The dye is not coming off in my hands when I spin, but I steam the yarn afterwards, after I've made it. That's like, but I would rather have it not be color fast, have it be saturated, and have me be able to draft it. I want it to draft perfectly. That's why I don't pull when I make a top, I don't pull my top into sections when I dye it. I dye lengths of 40 feet. Because when you pull it, those little, when you split it and you weigh it, and then you dye it, those ends, those aren't very draftable. They're like, they felt a little bit. Even if the other stuff is perfect, it just pisses me off, it irritates me. So I'd rather have my weights be a little bit varied. I just tell them, they'll get, if I tell them they're going to get 4 ounces, they're probably going to get 4.2 ounces. So I might be losing a little bit of money, but I would rather have them be able to draft every single, And if it's a little sticky, I would tell them it's sticky. It's a little sticky, because we all make mistakes. The wind could have come up, something, who knows. Anyway, I hope that helps. Anyway, I think I've burned merino roving felt more coarse, but that could, no. 24 micron isn't very soft. 25 micron, Andrea, is about the limit for next to skin soft. So that's like at the very upper limit. So that's like Corriedale. That's like a medium wool. Like medium wool is like a 25 micron. So I think it's already coarse, and it probably had oil on it. And so then you did it, and then that's probably why it felt that way. Unless you used Dawn, which I don't hope you wouldn't. But if you use wash and dye, that wouldn't have happened too. But anyway, okay, we're gonna go off. I can see it's like getting temperamental. But anyway, I'm gonna see you guys tomorrow at 12:30. Thank you so much, and I promise I'll do a pot at the beginning for you, and we will move on. Bye, everybody. Thank you so much for your support.